Chapter 109. Han Hao held my hand and sat quietly next to me, gently patting my back. Gradually, I felt sleepy, closed my eyes and fell asleep. I didn't know how long I slept, but when I woke up, Han Hao was lying on the edge of the bed also asleep. Looking at Han Hao's sleeping appearance, I suddenly felt very happy. I gently touched Han Hao's handsome face. His sleeping appearance was just as beautiful as usual. Unknowingly, I gradually fell into a trance. After a while, Han Hao's body moved and he woke up. Looking into his hazy eyes, I actually blushed a little. I turned my head, not daring to look at Han Hao directly. Han Hao gently stroked my hair and asked, "How did you sleep? Did you feel better?" I nodded and answered, "Much better." "It's okay, don't worry." Han Hao raised his hand to look at his watch. "It's almost time for lunch. The housekeeper should have made a lot of delicious food. Do you want to go down and eat together? If it's not convenient for you, I'll bring some for you to eat, okay?" I shook my head and looked at Han Hao. "No, I don't really want to eat, so don't bother." "Then you should at least eat a little. Otherwise I'll be heartbroken. You can't bear to see me heartbroken, right?" Han Hao leaned over and gently kissed my forehead. He raised his head and looked at me. Stroking my face, he said, "What should I do? I just like you. Even if it's just looking at you, I feel very happy." Hearing Han Hao's words, my face instantly turned red. My eyes drifted a little. I looked at him and said softly, "Han Hao, didn't you tell me that you have a pool of roses at home? Can I go take a look?" "Ah, was that true? But my rose pool isn't that big. You won't like it, right?" "No, you can go down later. I'll go take a look first. Recently I've been too busy. I haven't had time to take care of the flower pond. Wait for me." Han Hao finished speaking and was about to get up. I grabbed his hand. Han Hao turned to look at me. I looked at him and said, "Let's go together." "I don't mind." He hesitated, but still helped me up from the bed. The two of us walked out of the bedroom one after the other and headed downstairs. As soon as we reached the living room, we saw Han Hao's father walking out of the study room. It seemed he was going to the dining room to eat. When he saw me, his eyes stopped on my face. I hurried forward and stood in front of him. "Hello, Uncle Han Shu. I'm sorry to disturb you." "Don't worry, Xiaoli. I didn't think you'd grow so big. It's been a long time since I've seen you." Han Hao's father's gaze softened. "Yes, I've heard my father talk about you, but I don't have much of an impression of you. That's for sure. When I went to your house as a guest, you were only a child of 2 or 3 years old. But since then, Hao especially liked to play with you. It turns out that he had already begun to like you since then." Hearing his father say that, my face instantly turned red. I lowered my head, feeling very embarrassed. Han Hao seemed to notice my embarrassment. He pulled me to look at his father and said, "Dad, you're talking nonsense again. You're going to eat, right? Hurry up. I'll take Xiaoli for a walk in the garden." I knew he was trying to change the subject. Han Hao's father looked at Han Hao, then at me. "Xiaoli, your father and I have known each other for a long time. We've been good friends for many years, so we're not strangers. I'll be frank with you. I think you know the consequences of leaving the Duanmu house without permission. If the Duanmu K can't hold back, he may push Hao and I into a dead end. I don't think that's what you want." I nodded and said, "Uncle Han Shu, I understand what you mean." He patted my shoulder and said, "Of course, I'm not forcing you to go back. Duanmu Lixiong just called me, and he already knows that you're here. He also agreed to let you stay here for 2 days. Of course, after 2 days, you have to leave. Otherwise, I don't know what Duanmu K will do to Hao. I don't care anymore. Hao's mother and I have already decided to go abroad to enjoy life. But Hao is different. He's at the peak of his career. If you have him in your heart, how can you bear to let him be surrounded by enemies?" "Dad, why are you saying all this?" Han Hao was a little agitated. I forcefully pulled his arm, indicating that he shouldn't say anything. I raised my head and looked at Han Hao's father. "Uncle, I understand what you mean. Don't worry. I won't let the Duanmu K have the chance to ruin your happiness. I'll go back to the Duanmu's house in the morning the day after tomorrow." "Thank you, Xiaoli." Han Hao's father nodded to me and entered the dining room. Han Hao pulled my arm and walked towards the garden. As soon as we walked out of the front door of the house, he stood in front of me and looked at me. Xiaoli, why did you agree to my father's request? Why do you have to go back? Don't you know that home is dangerous for you? I smiled at Han Hao and said, You're overthinking it. How could there be any danger? It's already been so long. I'm guessing that his anger towards me has pretty much dissipated. When I get back, his attitude towards me might even change. Do you believe what you just said? Han Hao asked me. Or do you still have feelings for him and can't let him go? I suddenly froze. That's right, even I couldn't believe what I had just said. I calmed myself down, looked at Han Hao and said, I know this is impossible. But other than using this method to numb myself, what else can I do? He clearly doesn't have feelings for me anymore. But my heart still feels like it's waiting for something. Han Hao reached out and pulled me into his arms. Okay, don't think about it. I won't force you to do anything you don't want to do. I just want you to be well and slowly accept me. Then, I will be satisfied. Listening to Han Hao's heartbeat, my heart felt more and more at ease. I nestled in Han Hao's arms. I suddenly wanted to give myself to him completely. Maybe he really was a man worth entrusting my life to. I hugged Han Hao tightly. Han Hao was shocked by my initiative. He hugged me and whispered in my ear, Xiaoli, why are you so proactive today? You make me scared. Huh? Scared of what? I lay on his chest and felt his excited heartbeat. Han Hao hugged me tightly and whispered, I'm scared that you'll leave me. I'm scared that I won't be able to hold you tightly in my arms like this anymore. Chapter 110. No, but please give me some time. Let me try to accept you. I leaned into Han Hao's embrace. Although my face was red, I couldn't help but speak my mind. Han Hao hugged me tightly and gently stroked my hair. Thank you, Xiaoli. Thank you for accepting me. I raised my head and looked into Han Hao's eyes. I smiled and said, Didn't you say there was a rose pond? Where is it? Take me there. Han Hao pulled me deeper into the garden. Suddenly, he went behind me and covered my eyes. I was very surprised. What are you doing? I asked. Shh, don't talk. I'll take you there and give you a surprise. Han Hao covered my eyes and gently leaned against my back. He was afraid that I would fall. After walking for a while, Han Hao suddenly stopped. He covered my eyes again and said, All right, we're here. But I'm a little nervous. Nervous about what? I asked, puzzled. Han Hao sighed and said softly, I'm afraid you won't like it. I chuckled and said, I haven't seen it yet. How do you know I won't like it? Hurry up and let me see it. Han Hao hesitated for a moment, then softly said to me, Okay. Han Hao slowly removed his hands from my eyes. I opened my eyes and saw a beautiful rose pond in front of me. Although the pond wasn't big, the flowers were blooming beautifully. They had been manicured into a heart shape. From the inside to the outside, each circle had a different color. It was very beautiful. Han Hao stood behind me and looked at my shocked face. He reached out and hugged me tightly. He whispered in my ear, Is it very small? You don't really like it, do you? I shook my head and said to Han Hao, No, I like it very much. I like it very much. Han Hao kissed my cheek and said, It's good that you like it. My efforts weren't in vain. I turned around and looked at Han Hao. Did you do all of this? I asked softly. Han Hao nodded and said to me, Because one time I went to the Duanmu family's house, I heard you mention the rose pond, and I knew the origin of the rose pond. I knew you longed for that kind of beautiful love. So after talking to Dad, I built a similar rose pond in our family's garden. Because I didn't trust anyone else to do it, I arranged for workers to build the pond. And then I personally went to the flower market to pick out a batch of the best rose sprouts and planted them in the pond according to my own ideas. I thought I would make a mess of it, but looking at it now, it's not bad. At least the shape is there, ha ha. Han Hao rubbed his head and stood in front of me with a silly smile. I didn't know why, but tears fell from the corners of my eyes. Looking at Han Hao's silly smile, I suddenly felt very happy. When Han Hao saw me cry, he frowned and reached out to wipe the tears from the corners of my eyes. Then he looked at me and said, Xiaoli, what's wrong? Did I do something to upset you again? Don't cry. Seeing you cry really hurts my heart. I reached out and hugged Han Hao tightly. I lay in his arms and cried very sadly. Han Hao didn't say anything. He just held me in his arms and softly said, "Xiaoli, it's okay. Don't cry. You still have me. Xiaoli, don't be afraid. I'll always be by your side." Han Hao, thank you. I don't know how to express my feelings, but I'm willing to accept you. I'm willing to be with you. Even if it's just as a friend, I'm willing. My tears soaked Han Hao's shirt. Han Hao hugged me tightly and softly said, "That's enough. That's enough. Xiaoli, as long as you're willing, I won't marry anyone else. I won't let you suffer for others. Don't worry, I'll definitely be with you." Just then I suddenly thought of something. I pushed Han Hao away and stood in front of him, keeping a certain distance from him. I looked at Han Hao and said, "But there's something I want to tell you. I don't want to hide anything from you. Of course, you can choose not to be with me because of this. I won't. There's nothing that can stop me from marrying you. You're more important to me than anything else. I'm pregnant." I lowered my head, not daring to look at Han Hao. "What did you say?" Han Hao looked at me with a puzzled expression. "I'm pregnant." My tears couldn't stop flowing. I lowered my head and said, "It's Xiao Kei's." Han Hao didn't say anything. He stood in front of me, still looking at me with a surprised expression. I understood that he couldn't accept this fact. This was within my expectations. Although I wasn't surprised, my heart still hurt. No matter what, I didn't want to hide anything from him. After a while, Han Hao walked in front of me. He held my face and looked into my eyes. He said softly, "It's not your fault. I guess Xiao Kei doesn't know either. No matter what, as long as it's your decision, I'll believe it's the right one. Even if you want me to die for you, I'll do it without hesitation." I reached out to touch his face and looked at him. "Silly, what are you talking about? How could I do that to you? I just think it's unfair to you. After all, this child isn't yours. Even if you're willing to accept it, will your parents accept it? This is my business. You don't have to worry about it. Take care of your body and give birth to the child. I'll take care of you and the child." Han Hao stroked my hair and comforted me softly. I leaned against Han Hao's chest and nodded. This long-awaited feeling of peace made me feel comfortable and at ease. It was as if I had found a harbor to dock at. Han Hao and I strolled around the garden for a while, before we returned to our room. He was worried that I would be tired, so he insisted that I should sleep. I couldn't persuade him otherwise, so I had to compromise. He made me lie down on the bed, and covered me with the blanket. Then, he sat down next to me and looked at me quietly. I held Han Hao's hand and looked at him. "Are you tired?" Han Hao looked at me. "Yes, but when I see you, I don't feel tired anymore." My face was a little hot. I moved to the center of the bed and patted the spot next to me. I looked at Han Hao shyly and said, "Why don't you come up and lie down for a while? It's better than sitting down and resting." Han Hao looked at me with an expression of disbelief and asked, "Huh? Is that really appropriate?" I pursed my lips and rolled my eyes at Han Hao. "If you don't want to, then forget it. I'm going to sleep. Don't disturb me. Good afternoon." Then I turned my back to him and closed my eyes. Chapter 111. Han Hao was stunned. Then, he jumped onto my bed and lay down next to me. He said softly, "Xiaoli, I won't move. I'll just quietly stay by your side and watch you sleep." Han Hao lay down next to me. I could feel that he wasn't asleep. Hearing him say that, I suddenly felt very happy. Han Hao didn't say anything else. The quiet atmosphere became tense. After thinking for a while, I turned to face Han Hao. Han Hao was startled and sat up. He looked at me and asked softly, "Are you feeling uncomfortable? Or did I disturb you?" I smiled and shook my head. I pulled him to lie down. The two of us lay face to face. Looking at him, I felt that he was very nervous. Han Hao's face was a little red. Looking at his bashful appearance, I couldn't help but laugh. Han Hao looked at me with a puzzled expression. "What's wrong? Is there something on my face?" Han Hao reached out and touched his face. Looking at his comical appearance, I didn't know what to say. I moved forward and fell into his arms. Han Hao was shocked by my sudden movement. He was stunned for a moment. Then he reached out and hugged me. I leaned against his chest. I could feel his heart beating very fast, and his body temperature was rising. I lifted my head from his embrace and looked at his rosy face. I smiled and asked, Han Hao, why is your heart beating so fast? Han Hao's eyes were wandering. He didn't dare to look at me directly. He said softly, It's nothing. At first glance, I knew he was lying. I reached out and gently touched his face. You're not telling the truth. It's not like that. I just don't know how to say it. Han Hao's face was red, but his eyes were sincere. But you promised me that you would tell me everything. You haven't said anything yet. Han Hao wanted to say something but stopped. You what? It's my first time. It's my first time, lying on the bed with a girl. Han Hao pulled me into his embrace, his heart beating even faster. Hearing Han Hao's words, I couldn't help but laugh. I leaned against Han Hao's chest and softly asked, Xiao Hao, let me ask you a question. How many girlfriends have you had? Han Hao thought for a while. He gently kissed my forehead and said, You're the first. I raised my head and looked at him in surprise. No way. You're such an excellent man. How could you not have a girlfriend? I thought you'd have at least 8 or 10. Han Hao pursed his lips and looked at me. How is that possible? I've always kept a low profile, and I don't like to go to places with a lot of girls. Of course, the Black Nightmare group is so busy, and I don't have time to go to parties or anything like that. There are very few opportunities to come into contact with girls, so it's normal that I don't have a girlfriend. The woman who becomes your girlfriend must be very happy. She has such a handsome, quiet, and caring boyfriend. She'll definitely be spoiled to the heavens. Aren't you my girlfriend? Han Hao hugged me tightly in his arms. He whispered, Xiaoli, do you know? This feeling right now is like a dream to me. I'm really afraid that when I wake up, you'll disappear from my arms. I just want to stay by your side. It doesn't matter if you really love me or not. As long as you don't push me away, I'm really satisfied. Really, you're better than anything else. I leaned against Han Hao's chest and nodded gently. I understand. Soon it'll be over soon. I said to Han Hao. Han Hao gently stroked my hair and patted my back. Be good. Sleep for a while. You need rest now, not only for yourself, but also for the baby. Sleep. I'll hug you to sleep. I leaned against Han Hao's chest and nodded. I kissed Han Hao's body fragrance and listened to his heartbeat. Not long after I fell asleep. I didn't know how long I slept, but it was a very good sleep. Perhaps it was because my heart was no longer lonely, and it had found its harbor. When I woke up again, I was still in Han Hao's arms. He was also asleep. Looking at him sleeping soundly, I thought he was very cute. I didn't have the heart to wake him up, so I quietly leaned against his chest and looked at him. I felt very happy. Just then there was a knock on the door. The knocking woke Han Hao up. He rubbed his eyes and asked the door, Who is it? What's the matter? Young master. Master wants you to go downstairs quickly. He said that young Master Duan Muke is waiting for you downstairs. The housekeeper's voice came from outside the door. Duan Muke. Hearing Duan Muke's name, Han Hao and I woke up. We looked at each other. He looked at the door and said, Okay, I got it. Tell my father that I'll go down immediately. Okay. The housekeeper answered and left. I looked at Han Hao and felt a little nervous. I didn't know what to do. Han Hao saw that I was worried. He gently stroked my face and said, Xiaoli, don't be afraid. I'm here. When I go out, don't go out. Stay in the bedroom. Don't go out. If Xiao Ke sees you, I'm afraid he'll hurt you. I thought for a moment, then looked at Han Hao and said, How about I go? I'm afraid he'll hurt you. Han Hao shook his head. He won't. Don't worry. Wait for me to come back. Han Hao kissed my forehead and then walked out of the room. I didn't feel at ease, so I opened the door a crack. Although I couldn't see them, I could hear what they were talking about. I heard Han Hao's voice. Xiao Ke, how come you have time to come find me at my home today? Don't talk nonsense. Hand over cold glaze. I'm here to pick her up. Hearing Duan Muke's voice, I couldn't help but shiver. I'm sorry, Xiao Quebec. I don't want to lie to you. Xiaoli is with me, but I don't want to give her to you. You've already hurt her too much. I don't want her to get hurt again. Right now I just want to protect her. Han Hao's words were very firm. I heard Duan Muke laugh coldly. He said, You think you can do that? You want to protect her. What ability do you have to protect her? What qualifications do you have to protect her? Do you really think you can give her the life she wants? Let me tell you, we haven't divorced yet. I can change my mind at any time. Do you think you'll really get her if you take her away? Stop dreaming, Han Hao. You used to be very rational. How did you become so ignorant? My father always thought about you and Han Shu. Do you think you're worthy of my father's care for you? Chapter 112. Hearing Duanmukei's sarcastic words, I'm sure Han Hao and his father didn't feel good. At this time, I heard Han Hao's father say, Xiao Kei, I think there might be some misunderstanding between you and Hao Er. Regarding Xiaoli, I received a call from your father. He already agreed to let Xiaoli stay at my house for 2 days. I also told Xiaoli that she would only stay at my house for 2 days. When the time is up, I'll arrange for a car to send Xiaoli back. What do you think? Han Shu, this matter isn't a misunderstanding. As long as Han Hao hands over the cold glaze, I won't cause trouble for your family. If Han Hao insists on not handing over the cold glaze, Han Shu, you know my temper. I don't even know what I can do. Duanmukei's words clearly carried a threatening tone. Xiao Kei, if you have a problem, then come at me. Don't hurt my father. If you have a problem, then come at me. I felt that Han Hao already had a temper. I was suddenly worried that he wouldn't be able to control himself. Xiao Kei, you're going too far. Even if you don't look at this, you have to look at the relationship between our families. Especially since you and Hao Er grew up together, right? Han Hao's father's tone had already softened. I heard Duanmukei laugh coldly. He said, Han Shu, it's too late for you to talk about relationships with me. As far as I know, Han Shu, you have a company under the name of the Kurosawa, right? But after operating it for so long, how come you haven't received any funds or financial reports from that company? Presumably it's all under your name. There's such a thing. Hearing Duanmukei's words, it seems like he caught onto someone else's weak spot. Dad, is that true? Han Hao asked in disbelief. Hao Er, I'll tell you more about this when I have the chance. Han Hao's father's tone of voice had completely lost all confidence. Cut the crap. Hurry up and hand over cold glaze. I don't have time to waste on you. If you don't want things to get worse, hurry up and bring her out. Duanmukei was getting impatient. I heard Han Hao say, Don't worry. I won't give her to you. It seemed that Han Hao was determined not to hand me over to the Duanmu Quebec. I was afraid that the Duanmukei would do something to Han Hao and his father. I pushed the door open and ran downstairs. Wait. I ran downstairs and stood in front of them, looking at them. Duanmukei was standing across from Han Hao. His expression was very serious. It seemed that he was really angry. I stood in front of Duanmukei and looked at him. Han Hao didn't bring me here. I insisted on coming here. Don't make things difficult for Han Shu or Han Hao. Everything was my own idea. They couldn't persuade me otherwise, so they compromised. Duanmukei sneered. It's only been a day, and you're already siding with an outsider? You haven't even divorced yet, and you've already found your next home. Xiao Kei, don't speak so harshly. How can you face Xiaoli like this? Han Hao was very angry. He pulled my arm and pulled me behind him. Then, he stood in front of me and stared at Duanmu Quebec. Han Hao, the one who has the least right to talk about me here is you. I treat you as my best friend. Not only did you not stand on my side, but you also stole my woman. Do you think this is something a brother should do? Duanmukei also stared at Han Hao. Don't talk about it. I roared angrily. I looked at Han Hao. Although I was very reluctant to part with him, for the safety of their family, I decided to agree to go back with Duanmu Quebec. I looked at Duanmukei and said, I agree to go back with you. That's good. Duanmukei looked at me, then walked towards the door. As he walked, he said to Han Hao's father, If you want to thank someone, you should thank Xiaoli. She helped you keep your secret. Of course, don't worry, I won't tell anyone. The Black Nightmare Group is such a large enterprise. It doesn't make much of a difference to a small enterprise like yours. I turned to look at Han Hao. The tears at the corners of my eyes couldn't stop flowing down. I looked at him and said, I have to go. Although I really want to stay here for a few days, it seems that I can't. As long as I can protect you, I'll be satisfied. I forced out a very ugly smile. Han Hao looked at me and sighed. Then he turned and ran towards Duanmu, Quebec. He shouted, "Xiaoke, wait!" Duanmu stopped and turned to look at Han Hao. Han Hao said to him, "Xiaoke, can you let Xiaoli stay here for one night?" Han Hao's tone sounded like he was begging Duanmu, Quebec. Duanmu laughed coldly. He looked at Han Hao and said, "What? Are you begging me?" "Yes, I'm begging you. Can you let her stay here for one night? I'll send her back tomorrow morning." Han Hao lowered his head. His tone was sincere, but my heart ached when I heard it. For me, he was begging Duanmu so humbly. This wasn't what I wanted. "No." Duanmu bluntly refused Han Hao. Han Hao raised his head and looked at Duanmu, Quebec. "Why? Why not? You think I'll give you a chance to be alone with my woman, and then let you cheat on me? Stop dreaming. I won't help you, at least not now." Duanmu raised his head and looked at Han Hao arrogantly. I wanted to say something, but I didn't know what to say. At this moment, a car drove into the courtyard. A person ran out of the car. It was none other than Xinyao. Xinyao ran into the living room. She ran past Duanmu and glared at him. Then she ran in front of me and Han Hao. She grabbed my hand and looked at me. "Sister-in-law, how are you today? Did you have a good rest?" "I'm fine. But why are you here?" I asked, very puzzled. Xinyao pulled my arm and looked at Duanmu, Quebec. Then she looked at me and said, "Dad told me my older brother ran away. I thought he must have run to your place, so I quickly ran over here to take a look. I was afraid he would cause trouble for you and Han Hao Gij." Xinyao turned her head and saw Han Hao's father. She greeted him cordially. Duanmu looked at Xinyao and said impatiently, "Why are you here? Hurry up and go home." "Why can you come, but I can't?" "Dad told me to bring you home, because he was afraid you would cause trouble for Uncle Han Shu. Besides, aren't you always with Yuxian? How come you have the mind to care about sister-in-law Xiaoli? Seriously, what's wrong? Do you want to have a foot in two boats?" Xinyao didn't give Duanmu any face. Duanmu looked at Xinyao with a red face and said, "Hurry up and go home while I'm in a good mood. Don't provoke me." Chapter 113. "Bro, Dad told me to take you home. If you don't, he'll personally come and take you home. When that happens, things might get even worse." Xian Yao looked at Duanmu with a sinister smile. "Really?" Duanmu looked at Xian Yao with disbelief. Xian Yao laughed coldly. She looked at Duanmu and said, "Of course it's true. Would I dare to joke about our dad?" It looks like Duanmu Tachio was also angry. Otherwise, how could he threaten Duanmu like this? Duanmu thought for a moment, then turned to me and said, "You come home with me." Han Hao suddenly rushed in front of me and blocked my path. He looked at Duanmu and said, "No. No, Han Hao. Why do you want her to stay here for the night? What do you want to do to her? Or what do you want to do?" Duanmu was angry again. Xian Yao suddenly grabbed Duanmu arm and said, "Let's go, bro. Dad already agreed for sis-in-law Xiaoli to stay here for the night. Don't stop her." With that, Xian Yao pulled Duanmu arm and walked towards the door. Duanmu struggled as he looked at Han Hao and said, "Han Hao, it's only for one night. If you dare to do anything to her, you and I can't exist under the same sky. Let's go." Xian Yao pulled Duanmu away. Before leaving, she quietly turned around and gave us a look. Seeing the two of them walk out of the room, my heart calmed down a bit. I let out a long breath and sat down on the sofa. I turned to look at Han Hao and his father. They also sat down on the sofa. It looks like Duanmu gave them a lot of pressure. I stood up and looked at Han Hao's father. I bowed deeply and said, "Uncle Han Shu, I'm sorry to have caused you trouble. I didn't think he would be so extreme." Han Hao's father looked at me and said, "It's okay, Xiaoli, don't think too much. That's just how his temper is. It's good that Xian Yao pulled him away. Otherwise, I'm really afraid he would do something." Han Hao looked at his father and said, "Dad, don't worry. I won't let Duanmu hurt Xiaoli. And I definitely won't let him hurt our family." I looked at Han Hao and said with guilt, "Xiao Hao, I'm sorry. I didn't think things would turn out like this. How about I go back now?" Then I stood up from the sofa. and walked towards the door. Han Hao suddenly reached out and grabbed me. Don't go. It's very late. Don't go back. He already agreed to let you stay here for the night. Don't go. Han Hao's father also looked at me and said, That's right, Xiaoli. It's getting late. You should stay and rest. Tomorrow, I'll have Hao Er take you back. It's okay. I'll take responsibility if anything happens. I turned and looked at Han Hao. Then I looked at Han Hao's father and said, Thank you, uncle. I'm sorry to disturb you. It's okay. Hao Er, hurry and take Xiaoli upstairs to rest. Han Hao's father finished speaking. Han Hao pulled me upstairs. When we returned to the bedroom, Han Hao closed the door behind us. He turned and hugged me tightly. He stroked my hair and said softly, Xiaoli, I was just scared. I was so scared that he would do something to you. I patted his back and comforted him. Don't be scared. Aren't I fine now? It's okay. It's all in the past. You know, I was really scared that he would take you away from me. I've been waiting for you for so long. And now you're finally by my side. Although there's only one night left, I still can't bear to leave you. I didn't know why, but when I heard Han Hao's words, my heart ached. I patted Han Hao's back and said, Wait a little longer. In 11 more days I'll be free. Wait for me to come back. I will. I will definitely wait for you to come back. Han Hao cupped my face and gently kissed my forehead. I looked up at Han Hao's handsome face and said softly, I want to take a hot bath. Can you help me run the water? Okay. Han Hao carried me horizontally and placed me on the bed. Then, he took out a set of women's pajamas from the wardrobe and put it on the bed. He gently stroked my face and said, I'm going to run the water now. You can change into these pajamas later. I asked the nanny to buy them for you. I don't know what size you like, but I bought a similar size. I don't know if they fit. You can try them on later. I'm going to run the water. With that, Han Hao turned and walked to the bathroom. I picked up the pajamas Han Hao had prepared for me. The material of the pajamas was very soft and emitted a faint fragrance. I looked into the bathroom and heard the sound of the water running. I suddenly felt very happy. If only I could be with him forever. But I didn't know why, but at the same time my heart ached. Was it reminding me that Duan Muke was still in my heart? Maybe I never forgot him. Maybe I still loved him. Then what about my feelings for Han Hao? If Duan Muke was two-timing, wasn't I the same? Didn't I like Duan Muke on one side and Han Hao on the other? With that thought, I suddenly felt like a bad woman. At that moment, Han Hao came out of the bathroom. He looked at me, who was sitting on the bed, and said softly, Xiaoli, I've run the hot water. Come in and take a bath. I stood up from the bed and walked to the bathroom. I wanted to go in and change, but I realized that there was no place to put clothes. I turned and looked at Han Hao with a blank face. Han Hao seemed to understand something. He suddenly turned and said to me, I won't look. Just change. I was shocked by Han Hao's cute behavior. I covered my mouth and laughed. He didn't know what to do. He said to me, What are you laughing at? I won't look. Don't worry. I looked at Han Hao's back. I believed that he wouldn't peek. I put the pajamas on the bed and stood behind Han Hao. I started to take off my clothes one by one. Han Hao stood in front of me. He kept looking in front of him and didn't turn around to look at me. After I was completely undressed, I stood naked behind him. Han Hao whispered to me, Xiaoli, I have a question I want to ask you. What is it? Aren't you afraid that I'll suddenly turn around while you're changing? A smile appeared on my face. I reached out and hugged Han Hao from behind. Han Hao was very surprised. I leaned against his back and could feel his heart beating very quickly. I whispered to Han Hao, I believe you. You are not that kind of person. Because you said that you would not do anything to hurt me. I believe you. Besides, since I have accepted you, of course I am willing to give myself to you. Chapter 114. Han Hao held my hand and said softly, Xiaoli, thank you for trusting me. But don't worry. I won't take advantage of you at a time like this. You and the baby in your belly are the most important. Han Hao patted my hand gently and said, Okay, be good. Go take a shower. I'll wait for you at the door. If you need anything, just call me. I'll rush in immediately. Xiao Hao, thank you. I hugged him tightly, then let go and went into the bathroom. I soaked in the bathtub, feeling the warmth of the hot water. Through the frosted glass window of the bathroom, I could see Han Hao's figure pacing back and forth at the door. He had never left. My heart felt warm. After bathing for almost an hour, I stood up from the bathtub and dried myself. Only then did I realize that I had left my pajamas outside. I stood at the door of the bathroom and called out softly, "Xiao Hao, are you there?" "I'm here. What's wrong?" Han Hao immediately appeared at the door. It seemed that he had been there the whole time and hadn't left. "I want to trouble you with something. I forgot to bring my pajamas in. Can you pass them to me?" "Okay, no problem." Han Hao left the door. It seemed that he was going to get the pajamas. I opened the bathroom door and stood there naked. I watched Han Hao walk to the bed. He bent down and picked up the pajamas on the bed. Han Hao turned and said to me, "Shaoli, I brought the pajamas." Han Hao turned and saw me standing naked at the bathroom door. He opened his eyes wide and stared at me blankly. He held his pajamas in his hand and looked at my naked body. His face gradually turned red. I looked at Han Hao's shy expression and hugged my arms tightly. I looked at him and said softly, "Cold." Hearing my words, Han Hao finally reacted. He hugged his pajamas and ran in front of me. He put the pajamas on me, then carried me to the bed and covered me with the blanket. His face was still red. He gently stroked my hair and said, "I'm sorry, I didn't do it on purpose. I don't know why, but I slipped away." I reached out and touched his cheek. "It's okay." Han Hao looked at my arm. I didn't know why, but his face was getting redder and redder. He suddenly stood up and turned his back to me. I looked at his back in confusion. "Xiao Hao, what's wrong?" Han Hao stammered for a long time. He lowered his head and said, It's nothing. I'm going to calm down." As soon as he said that, he quickly walked to the bathroom and closed the door. Then, I heard the sound of running water. It seemed he was taking a shower. I seemed to understand something. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Not long after, the sound of running water stopped. Han Hao walked out of the bathroom. His upper body was naked, and he wore a pair of beach shorts. He stood at the bathroom door and dried his hair. I looked at him and couldn't help but laugh. Han Hao looked at me in confusion. "What's wrong? Why are you laughing so happily?" I hooked my finger at Han Hao, signaling him to come over. Han Hao put the towel back in the bathroom and walked to the bed. He sat next to me and asked softly, "What did you call me for?" "I have something to ask you." "And what's the matter?" Han Hao said while stroking my hair. "Why is your face so red?" I covered my mouth and tried not to laugh. Han Hao was embarrassed by my strange behavior. He blushed again. He turned his face and said softly, It's nothing. I just felt hot." After hearing Han Hao say that, it seemed my guess was right. He had a reaction to me. I covered my face and couldn't help but laugh. Han Hao looked even more embarrassed. He pouted and looked at me. "Laugh again. If you laugh again, I won't be polite to you." After hearing Han Hao say that, I laughed even louder. Han Hao saw that I was laughing so happily. He couldn't bear it anymore. He jumped on me and tickled me. I helplessly begged him for mercy. "I was wrong. I was wrong. Don't tickle me. It's so ticklish." I laughed and struggled, feeling like I was in great pain. Han Hao held my face and looked at me. "Shaoli, what should I do? I love you so much. Just looking at you like this is enough for me." Han Hao held my face and kissed me deeply. I reached out and hugged him tightly. I didn't want to think about anything else. I just wanted to spend the night quietly with him. Han Hao raised his head and touched my face. He looked at me with gentle eyes. "Shaoli, can I hug you to sleep for the night?" I looked at Han Hao and thought for a moment. Then I nodded. Han Hao lay down next to me. He held me in his arms. Because Han Hao wasn't wearing a shirt, I was pressed against his chest. I could feel the smooth skin of his chest. I patted his back, my heart at ease. Han Hao whispered to me, "What are you doing?" Touching my back. "Are you acting like a hooligan?" I laughed. "Who's acting like a hooligan? You're the one who threw yourself at me. With such a handsome guy by my side, I have no choice but to take advantage of him." Han Hao hugged me and stroked my hair. He said to me, "Time really flies. You have to go back as soon as the sun rises." I always feel like I'm sending you to hell. My heart hurts. What's there to feel bad about? When I go back, I'll tell Xiao Ke that I've decided to be with you. He wants to divorce me so badly, so he probably won't care who I'm with. Han Hao stroked my hair. Xiaoli, you still have him in your heart, don't you? Hearing Han Hao's question, I was stunned. I didn't know how to answer. Han Hao continued, it's okay. Just tell me what you want to say. I sighed and told him, I don't want to lie to you. I still have him in my heart, especially now that I know I'm pregnant. I can't erase my feelings for him so quickly. After all, I really do love him. I understand. I won't force you. As long as you're happy, I'm willing to do anything. Han Hao kissed my forehead. This kiss made me feel like I owed him. Xiao Hao, I hope you can give me some time to truly accept you. Otherwise, this won't be the best decision for you, me or him. Is that okay? You don't have to be like this. I'll support you no matter what you do. I won't leave you. As long as you remember that no matter what, I'll always be by your side. Han Hao hugged me tightly. Although we shared a bed, Han Hao didn't touch me. He just hugged me tightly. When my heart was cold, he warmed me with his love. Chapter 115. Just like that, Han Hao and I snuggled together and slept through the night. That night, I slept very soundly. I didn't think about anything, and my heart was at ease. The next morning, when I woke up, Han Hao was no longer by my side. His clothes weren't by the bed either. There was only the towel he'd taken off yesterday draped over the stool. I panicked when I couldn't see him. I quickly got out of bed and ran to the door. Just as my hand touched the doorknob, the door opened. Han Hao stood at the door, with a sumptuous breakfast. When he saw me standing in front of him with disheveled hair and a dirty face, he was stunned at first. Then he burst out laughing. I pursed my lips and asked Han Hao, why are you laughing so happily? Han Hao brought the breakfast into the room. Then, he reached out and stroked my hair. You just woke up, right? How was your sleep? How many rolls did you make on the bed with your messy hair? I pursed my lips and looked at Han Hao. I just woke up, but I didn't see you. I didn't know you went to get breakfast. Han Hao smiled. He reached out and hugged me. Then he gently kissed my forehead. He looked at me and said, silly, you were worried, weren't you? I didn't leave you. I noticed that your appetite has been bad recently, so I brought breakfast over to feed you personally. I think you'll be able to eat more. I turned to look at the breakfast. It was all my favorite food. I looked at Han Hao. Just as I was about to open my mouth to ask, Han Hao spoke first. How is it? Is it all your favorite food? How did you know? I looked at Han Hao in surprise. He stroked my hair and said, I asked Xingyao, Uncle Lung and Auntie Lung. They told me, so I wrote it all down. I burrowed my head into Han Hao's arms and said, thank you for being so attentive to me. Then you'll have to eat the breakfast I've prepared so carefully. And then I'll feel that my efforts have not been in vain. Han Hao scratched my nose. I nodded and sat down at the table. Looking at the delicious food on the table, I picked up a soup dumpling and handed it to Han Hao. He was stunned. Then he opened his mouth and ate the soup dumpling. His eyes were fixed on my face. I turned my head away in embarrassment, my face burning. I began to eat. Han Hao sat next to me and stared at me. After a while he stared at me and said, Xiaoli, do you know? I really want to be with you like this forever. I want to see you every morning when I wake up. I want to have breakfast with you every day. And then you feed me. You're right, Gunyinji said. Hearing him say that, I couldn't help but laugh. I looked at him and said, why should I feed you? Aren't you the one feeding me? After hearing what I said, Han Hao burst into laughter. He said to me, I was wrong. I was wrong. I'll feed you. I'll feed you. I made a face at Han Hao. Han Hao looked at me and gently touched my face. He said, but Xiaoli, you're going back soon. Although I don't want to let you go, I know that the best days are yet to come. I'll wait until you get divorced, and then I'll marry you. Okay. I looked at Han Hao and said, that's good. You have 10 days to regret it. I'm not going to regret it. I'm not stupid. You're such a good wife. I don't want to give up. Okay, hurry up and eat. When you're done, I'll take you back. I nodded and ate all the breakfast Han Hao had prepared. After breakfast, I cleaned up a bit and followed Han Hao back to the Duanmu house. On the way, Han Hao didn't say much, but looking at his expression, I knew that he didn't want to leave. He just didn't say anything. Finally, we arrived near the Duanmu house. Han Hao stopped the car. He sat in the driver's seat and didn't raise his head. After a while, Han Hao raised his head and looked at me. I could see that his eyes were a bit red. I turned around and held his face gently, looking into his eyes. His tears flowed down from the corners of his eyes. Seeing him cry, my heart ached. I reached out and held him tightly in my arms. I patted his back and said to him, "Don't cry. You're hurting me too. It's going to be okay. Everything is going to be okay." Han Hao hugged me tightly. "Shaoli, promise me that you'll come back. Come back to me." I patted his back and nodded. I let go of Han Hao and reached out to wipe the tears on his face. I whispered to him, "Okay, you can stop here. If you go any further, you'll be even sadder. I don't want you to be sad." I kissed Han Hao deeply on the lips. Then, I opened the car door and left without looking back. I took my luggage and walked to the front door of Duanmu's house. As soon as I reached the door, I saw the housekeeper in the garden. I greeted the housekeeper, and the housekeeper opened the door for me. I walked in and walked into the living room. I saw Duanmu K sitting alone on the sofa, waiting for me. I looked at him, but didn't say anything. I walked past the sofa with my luggage and headed upstairs. Duanmu K glanced at me and said, "Stop." I stopped and turned around to look at Duanmu Quebec. I said coldly, "What's the matter?" Duan Muk stood up and walked to my side. He scanned me from head to toe. Then he leaned against my shoulder and sniffed. Then, he looked up at me and said softly, "You've only been out for a day, and you already have the smell of another man on your body." I looked at Duanmu Quebec. I knew he was trying to provoke me with his words. I ignored him and turned around to go upstairs. Unexpectedly, Duanmu K grabbed my arm. I struggled and looked at Duanmu Quebec. "What are you doing? Don't touch me." Duanmu K didn't let go. He stared at me. The more I struggled, the tighter his grip. Duanmu K looked at me and said, "Shaoli, tell me, did you sleep with Han Hao?" "Shut up. I'm not the kind of person you think I am. Let go of me." I pushed Duanmu K's chest as hard as I could, but he didn't let go of me. The two of us were so noisy that everyone in the house came out. Xiao Fingyao looked at Duanmu K holding my arm. She quickly ran over to Duanmu K and said, "Kair, let go of Shaoli. Shaoli is still very weak. You'll hurt her like this." Xingyao also ran downstairs. She looked at Duanmu K holding my arm. She pulled hard on Duanmu K's arm and shouted at him, "Brother, let go of sister-in-law. Brother, you're too strong. If there's anything, we can talk about it. Don't hit me." Chapter 116. Duanmu Tachio also came out of the study. Seeing Duanmu K's barbaric appearance, he roared, "Kair, let go of me." I glanced around. Only Yu Xian was standing on the stairs of the second floor, looking at us with a serious expression. Seeing that everyone had come out, Duanmu K let go of my hand and pushed me onto the sofa. My first reaction was to fear that something would happen to the baby in my belly. I hurriedly clutched my stomach. Luckily, there wasn't a lot of bleeding, and it didn't hurt. Xian Yao ran to my side and helped me up. Xiao Fingyao also came to my side. Seeing me clutching my stomach, she whispered, "Shaoli, what's wrong? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" I shook my head and raised my head to look at Duanmu K, who was looking at me with a serious expression. My heart didn't feel good. Was this still the man I loved so deeply? Why had he become so scary now? It was as if I couldn't remember his original appearance. Was this the real him? Thinking of this, I couldn't stop my tears from flowing down. I bent down to pick up the luggage that had been thrown on the floor. I turned to look at Xiao Fingyao and Duanmu Tachio. "Dad, Mom, I'm going upstairs." Xiao Fingyao looked at me with a worried expression. "Shaoli, you should go to Xian Yao's room and rest. If you feel uncomfortable, you must tell me." I nodded, picked up my luggage, and walked past Duanmu Quebec. I went straight upstairs to Xian Yao's room. Xian Yao followed me upstairs. As soon as we entered the room, I threw myself onto the bed and couldn't stop my tears. Xian Yao stayed by my side. She wanted to comfort me, but she didn't know what to say. Xian Yao gently patted my back. Sister-in-law, don't cry. Do you want to call Han Hao Gich? You're crying so hard. I don't know what to do. I shook my head. Because I was crying so hard, I didn't know what to say to her. I lay on the bed crying very hard. Xian Yao quietly stayed by my side. At this moment, the door was pushed open. Duan Muke stood at the door. When Xian Yao saw him, she stood in front of me. Looking at Duan Muke, she asked, Brother, what are you doing? Duan Muke looked at me, who was lying on the bed. Then he looked at Xian Yao and said, You get out. Brother, this is my room. You can't come in. Get out. After Xian Yao said that, she pushed Duan Muke with all her strength. Duan Muke grabbed Xian Yao's arm and threw her towards the door. Xian Yao lost her balance and fell to the ground. She raised her head and screamed, Brother, you're too much. Get out. Before Xian Yao could finish, Duan Muke closed the door and locked it. Xian Yao banged on the door with all her strength, but Duan Muke didn't open the door for her. He let her scream herself hoarse. I was still lying on the bed. Although I knew I was in the same room as Duan Muke, I still didn't want to talk to him. I lay on the bed and didn't raise my head. I didn't cry anymore. I just lowered my head and closed my eyes. I didn't want to talk to him. Duan Muke reached out and held my face. His eyes were fixed on me. He looked at me and said, What's wrong? You ran away because you were in the wrong. I really regret not bringing you back last night. If I had brought you back, you wouldn't have smelled like another man. Do you know that? Seeing you in such a sorry state right now, I really want to tear you to pieces. I looked into Duan Muke's eyes and glared at him. Duan Muke, you're really unreasonable. I can't reason with you. Please get out. I don't want to talk to you. Duan Muke sneered. Reason? I'm telling you I'm the reason. I can do whatever I want. I looked at Duan Muke's arrogant face and said fiercely, Why did you become like this? Why can't you listen to anything? Why do you always think that everything you think is right? Why can't you stand me? There are only 10 days left. Why don't we just have a peaceful divorce without disturbing each other? I also want a peaceful divorce, but what about you? We haven't divorced yet, but you've already started to hook up with another man. Moreover, he's my brother. So, it's not hard to imagine that you were already hooking up with another man when you were with me. You're being unreasonable. I shook off Duan Muke's hand and looked at him fiercely. I'm asking you to leave. I don't want to see you. Bring forward the divorce date. I've had enough of these days. Duan Muke, I used to love you very much. But now, I don't love you at all. After saying this, my tears couldn't stop flowing. Duan Muke looked at me. His eyes were fixed, but his expression immediately became very serious. He kept looking at me, but he didn't say anything. He reached out and picked me up. He opened the door and walked to our bedroom. Xinyao was standing at the door. She saw Duan Muke carrying me. I was still crying. She knew that I wasn't willing. She grabbed Duan Muke's arm and said to him, Brother, let go of her. I beg you. Don't hurt her anymore. Okay. Duan Muke stopped and looked at Xinyao. Let go. I know what I'm doing. What do you mean what you're doing? Didn't you say that you wouldn't bully my sister-in-law? Aren't you still bullying her? Your words can't be trusted anymore. Brother, let go of her. Xinyao pulled Duan Muke's arm with all her strength. She wanted to save me. Duan Muke swung his arm and shook Xinyao off. He looked at Xinyao and said, I'll say it again. I said, I know what I'm doing. We won't eat lunch or dinner. When it's time, I'll have the nanny send 2 servings to my room. Also, if you dare to bring Han Hao over, I'll destroy their house. Xinyao, don't let Han Hao come over. Don't. Before I could finish speaking, Duan Muke carried me into the room and closed the bedroom door. I don't know if Xinyao understood my meaning. If she really did call Han Hao over, with Duan Muke's temper, he would definitely be at odds with them. Duan Muke carried me into the room and placed me directly on the bed. Strangely, he didn't throw me this time. Just as I was about to struggle to sit up, he pressed me down on the bed. His upper body was on top of me, and his face was very close to mine. His eyes were fixed on me. I didn't know what he was looking at so intently. I felt really uncomfortable, so I turned my head away and didn't look at him in the eye. Unexpectedly, he turned my face and forced me to look at him. I put my hands in front of my chest and used all my strength to push his chest. However, he was too strong, and I couldn't move him even after pushing for a long time. Don't struggle. It's useless. I just want to look at you like this. Duan Mukei's tone suddenly became very gentle. Chapter 117. I didn't know why, but when I heard Duan Mukei say that, my heart suddenly felt a little excited. I gradually relaxed my struggle and let Duan Mukei lie on top of me and look at me. I didn't move and just quietly lay in his arms. I was afraid that he would lose his temper and do something to hurt me. Hurting me wasn't a big deal, but hurting my child was what I was really afraid of. Duan Mukei was on top of me, his eyes fixed on me. At that moment, I suddenly felt that he was back. I was a little excited and couldn't help but reach out and hug him tightly. Tears flowed down the corners of my eyes. I hugged him and said softly, "Xiaokei, is that you? Are you back?" Duan Mukei didn't say anything. He just hugged me tightly. I couldn't control my tears and cried even harder. We hugged each other for a while before Duan Mukei let go of me. He lifted his head to look at me. His gaze was really one that I was familiar with. I saw it very clearly. At that moment I was happy. It seemed that he was still in my heart. Just as I was intoxicated by seeing Duan Mukei's original appearance, Duan Mukei sneered. That cold expression woke me up. I realized that he hadn't changed back to his original appearance. I let go of his arms and turned my face to the side, not looking at his face. Duan Mukei reached out and adjusted my face. He stared into my eyes and said, "Women are cheap. You're holding one person in your arms, but you're thinking of another person in your heart. Tell me, how cheap are you?" I looked at Duan Mukei's mocking expression and became very angry. I stared at Duan Mukei and reached out my hand to push him. I looked at him and said, "Duan Mukei, I didn't force you to torture me, and I didn't do anything wrong to anyone. I admit that after you decided to divorce me, I chose to accept Han Hao because I knew that Han Hao was sincere to me. I also believed that he would treat me well. That's right. You didn't want me first, so you can't control my future choices." Duan Mukei cupped my face and said, "Yes, you're not wrong. It's true that I don't want you anymore. But you better understand that only when the divorce agreement is completed can it be considered a real divorce. Yulong Yuli are still my wife." Duan Mukei said this word by word to me in a methodical manner. I looked at Duan Mukei and sneered. I said to him, Okay, I can live as your wife during this time, but I sincerely hope that you can treat me politely. I don't want to have any conflict with you. Why don't we part ways peacefully?" Duan Mukei looked at me. He reached out and touched my waist. I didn't know what he wanted to do. Did he already know that I was pregnant? Duan Mukei touched my waist. He looked at me and said, "Okay, since you are my Duan Mukei's wife, you should do what a wife should do." Duan Mukei moved his hand from my waist to my legs. Gradually, his hand reached my inner thigh. I reached out and grabbed his hand. Duan Mukei stopped. He looked at me, his eyes still sharp. He looked at me and said, "What? Just now you said that you would do what a wife should do. What about now? What do you mean by doing this? Are you going back on your words?" I knew that I couldn't have sex with him now. I didn't have a choice. But if I didn't choose a suitable reason, Duan Mukei might force himself on me. I thought about it. I looked at Duan Mukei and said, "No, you can't do it." "Why?" Duan Mukei looked at me with a puzzled expression. His gaze made it seem like I was trying to escape. I grabbed Duan Mukei's hand tightly and said, "I really can't. I just had my period last night. I can't have sex with you." Duan Mukei looked at me and thought for a while. He moved his hand away from my leg. Then he looked at me and said, "Okay, I will believe you this time." He moved his hand away from me. I sighed softly. Luckily, the crisis was over for now. I sat up on the bed, grabbed a jacket and put it on. Then I walked to the door. Duan Mukei looked at me and asked, "Where are you going?" I stopped and said, "I'm not leaving. I'm going downstairs to take a look at the garden." I paused. Then I continued, "See what you've done to the flower pond." Then I turned around and left the room. I walked down the stairs through the living room, out of the house and into the garden. When I reached a familiar place, I was surprised by what I saw. It was very different from what I had imagined. The rose pond was no longer there. When I had torn it down, the ground had been a mess. Now it was gone. The ground was clean, and there was only an empty flower pond. The rattan chair next to it was still there. After the argument, Duanmuke didn't really tear down the flower pond. Just as I was looking at the current scene, and imagining what it had been like in the past, a voice came from behind a big tree in the depths of the garden. There's nothing left. What do you want to see here? I turned my head and looked in the direction of the voice. A figure came out from behind the tree. It was none other than Uxian. I wasn't surprised to see her. Uxian saw me and walked towards me. She stopped in front of me and looked me up and down. Then she looked at me and said, "You've become haggard. You must have had a hard time recently. Was it because you were tortured by Duanmu Gij, or because you were sandwiched between two men?" I looked at Uxian and sneered. "Uxian, it's useless to play these tricks with me now. I've already talked with Duanmu Quebec. We will divorce peacefully in 10 days. Nothing will happen. That way, you can be together with your Duanmu Gij openly. Isn't that what you wanted?" "That's right. I should thank you for your concession. I remember when you first entered the Duanmu family. I warned you that it wasn't easy to be the daughter-in-law of the Duanmu family. Did you think that the Duanmuke you fell in love with was his true personality? You were wrong. The current him is the most authentic him. You may not be able to accept this fact, but no matter who he is the man I love the most. Haha, I can only congratulate you. Congratulations on achieving your goal. I can only wish the two of you happiness. Duanmuke and I are no longer possible. Of course, he is no longer a threat to you." I looked at Uxian. I didn't know why, but when I said those words my heart ached. However, there were no tears. Sometimes when you love someone too deeply you can't even feel the pain. Chapter 118. Uxian looked at me and sneered. She looked at me and said, "Thank you, but there's something I need to tell you." Uxian moved closer to my ear and whispered, "When you weren't home yesterday, Duanmu Gij was with me the entire time. Did you know that? He only becomes especially gentle when he's with me. Especially when he's hugging me and... Forget it, I won't tell you. It's useless to tell you anyway. You two are about to get divorced." Uxian let out an ear-piercing laugh next to my ear. I took a step back and looked at her smug expression. I tried to control myself and not get angry. I calmed down and looked at Uxian. "That's good. I wish you happiness." I turned around and prepared to leave the garden. Uxian called out to me from behind. "Cold Glaze, you're not the same as before. I'm sure Duanmuke has pretty much wiped out your Miss Cold Glaze's temper. If you know what's good for you, don't try to cause any more trouble in the remaining 10 days. It's useless. You can't get Duanmuke's heart anymore." I stopped and turned around to look at Uxian. I sneered and said to her, "Duanmuke doesn't have me in his heart anymore. And I don't have him in my heart anymore. You don't have to worry about it. I won't disturb your future with Duanmu Quebec." Then I turned around and walked out of the garden. As soon as I left the garden, I saw Suri walking in through the gate. I looked at him and saw that his expression was very serious. When he saw me, he quickly walked in front of me. His serious expression didn't change. I looked at him with a puzzled expression and asked softly, "What's wrong? What's with this expression?" "I just received a call from Xinyao. She told me that Duanmuke was rough with you again." I immediately rushed over from the Lung residence. "Are you all right?" Suri looked me up and down. When he saw that I didn't have any external injuries, he sighed. "I'm fine. I just talked to him. We'll divorce peacefully. In the remaining 10 days, no one will hurt the other." Suri sighed and looked at me. "That's good. As long as you're fine." Xinyao was crying when she called me. Did Duanmuke get rough with her? She was crying very sadly. I don't know how she is. I looked at Suri's worried expression and felt that something wasn't right. I thought for a moment and suddenly understood. This brat probably fell in love with that girl Xinyao. I decided to sound him out. I looked at Suri and said, "I think so. Xinyao was trying to protect me. She used all her strength to pull Duanmuke. but Duanmuke seemed to have directly thrown her to the ground. I don't know if she's hurt. I glanced at Suri. Hearing my words, he became more and more worried. What? It can't be. She's still a girl, and she's Duanmuke's little sister. How could he be so heavy-handed to his own little sister? No, I have to go check on her. If she's hurt anywhere, I have to hurry and take her to the hospital. After saying that, Su-rue was about to rush into the house. I reached out and grabbed his arm. Don't get too excited, I said. You're a big man. How can you casually enter a young lady's boudoir? Suri's face immediately turned red. He suddenly looked at me blankly. What should I do? Young lady, please help me. Help me check on her condition. Please. Suri's big eyes sparkled as he begged me. Looking at his adorable appearance, I couldn't help but laugh. I felt that the time had come. I should be able to get something out of his mouth. I looked at Su-rue and said, That's easy, but you have to answer a few of my questions. If I'm satisfied with your answers, I'll help you. Su-rue thought for a moment and then nodded. What do you think of that girl, Xinyao? I didn't dare to ask the main question, so I asked a more off-topic one. Suri thought for a moment and said, When I first met her, I always felt that she was a princess. But after interacting with her for a long time, I discovered that she wasn't that kind of girl. Although her personality is rather straightforward, she has a very good heart. When President Duanmuke's condition had just stabilized in the hospital, she heard that my little sister was also in the same hospital. She especially bought a lot of gifts to visit my little sister. My little sister really likes her, and said that Xinyao was the most beautiful big sister she had ever seen. Then if Xinyao didn't have that kind of background, would you still think that she's that good? I gradually got closer to the main topic, and asked a more direct question. This has nothing to do with her background. This has nothing to do with her background. She's lively, cheerful, and outspoken. Although sometimes she's very headstrong, she would never do anything that would hurt others. There are a lot of things that she has to shoulder by herself. Seeing her so tired, my heart also feels bad. Including that day when Hanhao took you away, Duanmuke had the intention to rush towards me, but was stopped by Xinyao. She stood in front of Duanmuke and let me drive him away. Growing up, I've been protected by two women. One is you, the other is her. Her pure eyes have always emitted positive energy. Listening to Su-rue's praise of Xinyao, I'm already 70% sure that he has feelings for her. Last question. I looked at Suri and asked, Do you like her? Do you want to be with her? Hearing my question, Suri stared blankly for a moment, then lowered his head. He didn't answer. I poked him and asked, Answer. Why aren't you saying anything? Suri still didn't answer. He must have some misgivings in his heart. Otherwise, he wouldn't have answered so unhappily. Hurry up and answer. I pretended to be angry and roared at Suri. Suri raised his head and looked at me with a troubled expression. But when he saw my expectant eyes, he sighed and sneered. She and I are not people from the same world. Even if I like her, we can't be together. How could she like someone who couldn't be more ordinary? After hearing Suri's words, I understood. He liked Xinyao, but because of the difference in status, he felt that there was a certain gap between him and Xinyao. He didn't dare to pursue the matter with Xinyao. I gently patted Suri's shoulder and said, You think too much. Everyone is equal in love. It has nothing to do with status or identity. I understand, but who doesn't want to give their beloved woman a happy home? Even the place I'm living in now is a house that Hongming Association lent to me. It's already good that they don't charge me rent. The entire area of the house is probably not even as big as a guest room in the Duanmu family. If I were a father, I wouldn't be willing to marry my precious daughter to a pauper. Chapter 119. I looked at Suri and patted his shoulder. You can't be considered a pauper. Right now, you can be considered a Red Minghui bodyguard. Your income isn't bad. After I finish my business, I'll arrange for Uncle Bai to buy you a house. Consider it your employment fee. What do you think? Suri stared at me blankly. His expression suddenly became very downcast. He looked at me and said, Thank you, young Mississippi. You've already taken care of me and my sister. I can't accept this condition. Being your bodyguard is also to repay you for taking care of us. Silly. If I give you a house and a car, you can slowly save up money to buy it. It should be very fast. Only then will you have the financial foundation to pursue Xinyao. Therefore, you must accept these conditions. I also think highly of you. If Xinyao likes you, I sincerely hope that the two of you can walk together. I patted Suri's shoulder to give him some encouragement. Suri sighed and looked at me. AI. But no matter how hard I try, the gap between Xinyao and I will never reach the same level. Therefore, no matter what, thank you, young miss, for your kind intentions. I will still silently like her in my heart. Perhaps she will be able to find a good man who is more suitable for her. Perhaps it was an illusion, but I felt that Suri's eyes contained a bit of helplessness. I put down my hand and looked at him. I felt that this wasn't the fearless and indomitable Suri I first met. I tilted my head and looked at Suri. Ah, Suri, why do I feel like you've changed? You weren't this hesitant before. Why are you so submissive now? If you like her, then go after her. Why are you thinking about so many messy things? This was the first time I had lectured Suri. Perhaps my tone was a bit harsh, because Suri didn't raise his head to look at me. He lowered his head and said to me, "Young miss, you haven't experienced the life of us poor people. I know that you and Uncle Bai are very good to me. I also know that you and Xinyao have always treated me as a good friend. You have never treated me as a servant. But the more you treat me like this, the more inferior I feel in my heart. I always feel that with my status, I don't deserve to walk together with you, let alone express my feelings for Xinyao." Hearing Suri's words, I immediately thought of Yu Xian. She didn't come from a noble family, but her love for Duanmuke had never changed. She would even hurt others just to stand by Duanmuke's side. Looking at Suri's pained expression, I didn't know what to say. I patted his shoulder and said, "Let's talk about this later. There are still 10 days before my divorce. You should move here for the next few days. I'll ask Mom to arrange a guest room for you. You can stay here with peace of mind. You can also see Xinyao every day. Is that okay?" Suri scratched his head embarrassedly. Looking at his flushed face, he said, "How could I trouble you, young miss?" Although Suri said that, he was very happy in his heart. I glanced at him, patted his head and said to him, Don't do anything to hurt Xinyao. She's my best friend now. I can't bear to let others bully her. Young miss, don't worry. I swear I'll treat her well." Suri gave me a funny salute. Looking at his funny face, I couldn't help but pat his forehead again. Suri and I returned to the house. I first went to greet Duanmu Tachio and Xiaofingya. I told them that Suri wanted to stay with the Duanmu family until my divorce with the Duanmuke was finalized. They agreed. I called the nanny to help Suri settle down. Then, I went upstairs to find Xinyao. According to the nanny, ever since the morning, Xinyao had locked herself in her room and hadn't come out. It seemed the Duanmuke's actions had affected her greatly. I went to Xinyao's room and gently knocked on the door. No one answered, so I knocked again. I leaned against the door and heard the sound of someone waking up. Then I heard Xinyao's hoarse voice. "Who is it?" I sighed. Luckily, Xinyao didn't have any accidents. I softly said to the door, "Girl, it's me. I'm Shaoli." I leaned against the door and heard the sound of someone getting out of bed. Then I heard light footsteps. Not long after, the bedroom door was opened a crack. Xinyao peeked through the crack in the door. When she saw that it was me, her eyes turned red. I could clearly see that her eyes were glistening with tears. "Sister-in-law, I'm not feeling well. I want to rest for a while, so I won't let you come in. If I get sick and you get infected, it won't be good." Finished speaking, Xinyao closed the door. I quickly held the door open. I looked at Xinyao and said, "Be good. I'll stay with you for a while." Xinyao hesitated, but in the end she compromised. She opened the door, and I saw her messy long hair. Her eyes were swollen from crying, and she didn't have any makeup on. She looked dispirited. Xinyao's arm had 2 or 3 abrasions of varying degrees. My heart ached as I looked at her. She had gotten hurt because she wanted to protect me. I pulled Xinyao into the room and closed the door. Then, I pulled Xinyao to the bed and sat down. I glanced at the wound on her arm. Perhaps it was because she was too sad that she hadn't treated it yet. I went to the cabinet and rummaged through the medicine box in her room. I found an alcohol cotton ball and gently rubbed it on her wound. Perhaps it was because of the shock, but Xinyao's expression was pained, and tears streamed down her face. I raised my head and looked at her. Worried, I asked, "Is it too painful? I'll be gentle." Xingyao shook her head and bit her lip. I comforted her. "Hold on a little longer. It'll be fine soon." I took care of her wounds. After bandaging them, I took a tissue and wiped the tears on her face. Xingyao cried for a long time. Her face was full of tear stains. It took me a long time to wipe them clean. She was also very well behaved. She sat there obediently and looked at me with her beautiful big eyes. After treating her face and her wounds, I stood up and began to comb her hair. I didn't know how she tortured herself, but her hair was a mess. I combed her hair bit by bit, afraid that I would hurt her. Xingyao peeked at me in the mirror and smiled. Then, she looked at me with embarrassment. "Sister-in-law, is it hard to do? I'll do it myself." I shook my head and looked at her. "Let me do it. I've never combed your hair before. This time, I'll give you a beautiful hairstyle." Xingyao looked at me and smiled. "Why do I need it to be so beautiful?" Chapter 120. I slowly combed Xinyao's hair. I looked at her in the mirror and said, "Little Xingyao, thank you. Thank you for working so hard to protect me today." Xingyao reached out to cover her wound. Then, she looked at me and said, "It's nothing, sister-in-law. As long as you're fine, and my brother doesn't use violence against you, I'm satisfied. These small wounds are nothing." While I combed Xinyao's hair, I asked, "Little Xingyao, do you still like Han Hao?" Xingyao raised her head and looked at me in the mirror. Then, she shook her head and said, "I don't like him anymore. Seeing you and Gich Han Hao together makes me very happy. As long as you and Gich Han Hao are happy together, I will naturally be very, very happy." I gently stroked Xinyao's hair and said, "Silly girl, I know what you're thinking, but we also want you to be happy. We also want you to find a boy who can accompany you for the rest of your life." Xingyao smiled and pouted at the mirror. She foolishly acted cute. Then she said, "I know. I'm also looking slowly. There's no need to rush. I'll meet someone who suits me sooner or later." Xinyao's expression was somewhat dignified. I combed her hair and then sat next to her. Looking at her, I said, "Xingyao, what kind of man are you looking for? I'll help you look around and see if there's anyone around me." This was also what I wanted to know. I wanted to see if Suri could meet her requirements. Xingyao's eyes turned. Then she looked at me and said, "I want to find a tall, thin, handsome, and stylish rich second-generation heir. Of course, he must have good taste. No matter if it's in terms of clothing or lifestyle, he must be the same as me." I looked at Xingyao. Although she said that, her expression was still very dignified. I looked at her and asked, "Is this what you really want?" Xingyao looked at me and then lowered her head. In a soft voice she said, "Sister-in-law, it's not like that. I just want to find someone who can be with me forever. Someone who doesn't think too much. Someone who simply loves me and wants to be with me forever. Someone who simply treats me well." Hearing Xinyao's words, I suddenly felt that Suri still had a chance. I asked, "Then does your true feelings have anything to do with your identity, status, family background, or job?" Xingyao shook her head and said to me, "Sister-in-law, you also know that my status is like this. Compared to other girls, I'm already very superior since birth. I also have a stable job, and the income from this job is enough for me to live anywhere. Therefore, I don't need to rely on a man to provide for me at all. On the contrary, I can even take care of him. The meaning of what I'm saying is just like the vows that many people make when they get married. No matter if they're poor or rich, they'll continue to walk down this path. What I want is this kind of love." Although it's easy to say, there are many boys around me, but if they're not too much of a scumbag, then they're too cowardly to approach me. Listening to Xinyao's nagging, I suddenly felt that I was very lucky to be able to find my true love. Indeed, for a girl with such good conditions like Xingyao, it really wasn't easy to find someone that was truly suitable for her. While I was thinking, Xinyao looked at me with a puzzled expression. Sister-in-law, why are you asking me this question today? This little girl's intuition was very sharp. I shook my head and said, nothing. We're just chatting. Chatting. No, you're hiding something from me. Hurry up and tell me. If you don't tell me, I'm going to use my trump card. Saying that, Xinyao stretched out her hand and looked at me with a lecherous expression. I knew that her trump card was going to attack my chest. I subconsciously hugged my chest and shook my head. I was wrong. I'll tell you. Please let me go. Saying that, Xinyao put down her hand and obediently sat in front of me. She looked at me and said, okay, tell me. I'm all ears. I coughed and looked at Xinyao. It's like this. Actually, I do have a boy like the one you're talking about. It's just that. Listening to the first part of the story, Xinyao seemed fine. But when she heard it was just that, her expression changed. She looked at me and said, just what? It's just that he has low self-esteem. He always feels that there's a big gap between you and him. He can't catch up to you. So he dares to love you, but doesn't dare to say anything. I described Suri's current state to Xinyao. Dares to love, but doesn't dare to say anything? Who? Do I know him? How come I don't remember such a person? Xinyao racked her brain, but couldn't think of anything. After thinking for a while, she looked at me and said, sister-in-law, I still can't think of who he is. Tell me, I'll see if I know him. I put my hands on Xinyao's shoulders and said, Xinyao, I'll tell you. You'd better keep it a secret, because he didn't want me to tell you that he likes you. Xinyao nodded vigorously. Okay, don't worry. It'll be a secret. I leaned close to Xinyao's ear and whispered, you know the person who likes you. It's Suri. After saying that, I sat across from Xinyao and carefully observed her reaction. Xinyao stared blankly for a moment. Her eyes widened, and then she clutched her stomach and laughed loudly. She laughed until tears flowed out. I was shocked by her strange reaction. With a dark expression, I stood in front of her and asked, what's wrong? Why are you laughing so happily? Xinyao did her best to control herself from laughing. She tried several times but failed. She no longer had the appearance of a young lady. I could only sit in front of her in a mess, looking at her as if there was nothing left to live for. After a while, she recovered a little and gradually stopped laughing. She raised her head to look at me and said, sister-in-law, is this true? I nodded and looked at her. It's true. I just don't understand why you laughed so happily when you heard his name. Xinyao tidied her hair and then looked at me. Actually, I guessed it was him, but I didn't dare to say it. I just thought that such a cold and arrogant person like him wouldn't dare to say it. It's not like him at all. That's why I laughed. After hearing Xinyao's words, I suddenly felt that it made sense. How could such a cold and arrogant person like Suri be a yes-man? I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Xinyao saw me laugh, so she also laughed. The two of us sat face to face and laughed until our stomachs cramped. After laughing for a while, the two of us finally calmed down. I forced myself to climb onto Xinyao's bed. She lay down next to me. The two of us stared blankly at the ceiling. I looked at her and asked, honestly, what do you think of Suri? Chapter 121. Xinyao was silent for a while. Then she said, he's an idiot. I looked at her in confusion. Idiot? I don't think so. Why do you think he's an idiot? Xinyao turned to look at me. He obviously likes me, but he's hiding it. He doesn't dare to say it. Don't you think he's an idiot? He has his own concerns. That's why he doesn't dare to say it. Xinyao lay down again. She looked at the ceiling and said, I don't care about his status or status. The main thing is whether or not he is sincere to me. Although I have never been hurt emotionally, but the sisters by my side have been hurt too many times. I have also seen too many of them. I don't want to be like them, giving their heart, giving their body. And in the end, not only did they not get anything, but also made themselves sick. Why bother? I felt that Xinyao's words were reasonable. For an outstanding girl like her, there weren't many who could keep themselves clean. I turned to look at Xinyao and said, then how do you feel about him? It can't be that you like him because he likes you, right? Xinyao smiled. That's not the case. But right now, I don't think there's anything wrong with him. I just have a good impression of him. After all, we've just met. If I say that I like him, or that I love him, it would be so fake. I want to get to know him better. If we really fall in love with each other, then I'm definitely willing to be with him. Plus, he's your man, so I'm not worried. I sighed and looked at Xinyao and said, actually, Su Rui's background is quite clean. His father was wrongly imprisoned, his mother died early, and he has a younger sister who was seriously ill. However, after undergoing surgery, she's much better now. Moreover, he's now by my side and has a fixed job, and his income is quite considerable. I've decided that after I divorce your brother and return to the Red Tea Club, I'll arrange another house for him. Although there's still a certain gap between him and you, it's still quite good. I can't do much for him. That's all I can do for him. That's all I can do. Aya, sister-in-law, you're good to all of us, but you're not good to yourself. I've already said that I'll consider it. He's still under observation, so there's no rush. Xianyao looked at me and acted cute. How can I not be anxious? I don't even know how long it will be before I can see you again after the divorce. I'm so worried about your personal problems. I also hope that you can find a good man who can take good care of you and protect you. Su Rui may look like a child, but he's very mature inside. Xianyao's expression suddenly became serious. Looking at me, she said, sister-in-law, you're going to abandon me. I saw that she suddenly became serious, and I suddenly became nervous. I shook my head and said to her, No, I just can't see you every day. I don't know if you're doing well without me. Sigh. Xianyao hugged my arm and said, sister-in-law, how about I move to your house and live with you? That way, I can always be your shadow and pester you. Even if you annoy me, I won't leave you. What do you think? I looked at Xianyao and said, silly girl, you still have to stay here and take care of mom and dad. There's also that grumpy brother of yours. This family needs you to maintain. Although I really want to be with you, considering the current situation, the Duanmu family still needs you. Don't let someone else destroy this family. Hearing my words, Xianyao immediately understood who I was talking about. She nodded and said, of course. My biggest goal now is to drive her out of this family. It's all because of her that so many things have happened. I really don't like her more and more. I suddenly remembered that Suri had already moved in. I didn't know how he was doing. I looked at Xianyao and said, right, I asked Suri to move in. He'll stay here until I'm officially divorced. Then he'll leave with me. I don't know how he's doing. Let's go and take a look. Hearing me say that, Xinyao's face suddenly turned red. She said in a low voice, ah, is that appropriate? Won't it be awkward? Seeing Xianyao's reaction, I concluded that she also had feelings for Suri. I smiled and said, it's okay. Let's go. We can use this opportunity to get to know him better. Xianyao thought for a moment and then nodded. All right. Let's go. Then, the two of us sat up on the bed, tidied up, and walked out of the room. We arrived at the door of Suri's room. We knocked for a while, but no one answered. We didn't know where he had gone. I saw the housekeeper cleaning the room. I walked over and asked, Auntie, did you see the boy living here? The housekeeper thought for a moment and then nodded. I saw him. He just came downstairs and bumped into Master. They should be in the study now. Okay, thank you. Xianyao and I looked at each other. Then we walked downstairs to the study. As soon as we arrived at the door of the study, we heard Duanmu Tachio's voice from inside. Ah, Xiao Rui, your massage is so comfortable. After I got sick, a lot of work was delayed. As a result, I'm under a lot of pressure. You massaging my shoulders like this really relieves me a lot. You're under a lot of pressure. I've been here to give you massages for the past few days. You've been relieved a lot. If you need anything in the future, you can ask Xianyao to find me. I'll immediately come and help you. Then Suri's voice came. Duanmu Lixiong laughed out loud and said, is that so? That's great. I didn't feel comfortable calling a masseuse outside to give me a massage. Is busy. Xianyao's hands aren't strong enough. And I don't want my wife to work too hard for me. This is great. Fortunately, I have you. Otherwise, I would have gotten sick from overwork. No way. You're still very young and your body is so good. How could you get sick just like that? Duan Mutachio laughed again. Good boy, I heard that you're pretty good. It's really good that Boss Lung has a subordinate like you. What do you think? Do you want to consider coming to my Kurosawa? You can be my personal bodyguard. When I asked this question, I suddenly became very nervous. That's right, this was indeed a test. Suri answered. Thank you, President Duanmu, for your kindness. But right now I only follow Miss Lung. I also swore that I would never betray her. So I'm really sorry, President Duanmu. Duan Mutachio smiled. It seems that I don't have this good fortune, but I really do love talents. You're such a good subordinate. I really want to take you in. Chapter 122. Before I had time to react, Xanyao pushed open the door to the study. I had no choice but to follow her in. I saw Suri massaging Duan Mutachio's shoulders. When they saw me and Xanyao barge in, they were stunned. Suri stopped what he was doing. When he saw Xanyao, he actually blushed. Xanyao pursed her lips and looked at Suri. She probably saw Suri's blush. Suri turned his head away in embarrassment. Xanyao then looked at Duan Mutachio and said, Father, how could you steal him? That's not right. Duan Mutachio looked at Xanyao and smiled. Haha, father is just chatting with Suri. But I really like him. He's multi-talented, has a good personality, and most importantly is very loyal. Xanyao walked to Suri's side and listened to Duan Mutachio praise him. She suddenly pulled Suri's arm and walked past him. She said to him, Even if you like him, you can't steal your sister-in-law's man. She turned to look at Suri and gave him a meaningful look. Isn't that right, Suri? Suri's face turned even redder. He immediately understood the meaning of Xanyao's gaze. Then he looked at Duan Mutachio and said, President Duanmu is also very good to me. He takes care of me a lot. Sometimes, I feel like President Duanmu is as kind as my father. No matter what, I still have to thank President Duanmu for his good intentions. I've decided to follow our family's eldest miss for the rest of my life. Hearing Suri's words, Duan Mutachio's face bloomed with happiness. He looked at Suri and smiled. Really? Is he really that kind? As he said that, Duan Mutachio touched his face. Xanyao curled her lips and said, Father, he just gave you a few compliments, and you're already so happy. You weren't even this happy when my brother and I complimented you before. Duan Mulixiong smiled and said, Good daughter, I'm liking Su Rui more and more. Xanyao's eyes turned as if she had thought of something. She looked at Duan Mutachio and said proudly, Father, if you like Suri so much, why don't you help Suri solve a problem? What do you think? Duan Mutachio nodded. That's not a problem. Tell me, what is it? Xinyao looked at me and then at Su Rui. She then looked at Duan Mulixiong and said, Father, Su Rui's father was framed and sent to prison because of an unjust case. I heard that he didn't have a good time there. Su Rui also has a younger sister, who just recovered from a serious illness. The whole family is in tatters. If you really like him, then help him save his father. Hearing Xanyao's words, Suri and I were stunned. Neither of us had expected that Xanyao would ask Duan Mutachio to help her. Suri pulled Xanyao's arm, hinting that she shouldn't mention it. Xanyao looked at him and said, What? Isn't this what you've been worried about? Xanyao turned to Duan Mutachio and said, Father, although it's difficult to do, it should be a piece of cake for you. From the tone of Xanyao's voice, it sounded as if she was forcing Duan Mutachio to help her. I hurried over to Xanyao's side and whispered into her ear, Girl, how can you say this to our father? Besides, your attitude isn't right. Xanyao looked at me, hinting that I shouldn't say anything. Duan Mutachio thought for a moment, then looked at us and said, If you know that it's difficult to do, then why do you want me to do it? Suri looked disappointed. He looked at Xanyao and said, President Duanmu's words are reasonable. Xanyao, please don't mention it again. Xanyao didn't answer. She looked at Duan Mutachio and said, Father, you will definitely do it. Oh, you're that sure? Duan Mutachio looked at Xanyao in disbelief. Xanyao walked over to Duan Mutachio's side and whispered a few words into his ear. Duan Mutachio suddenly stared at Xine Yao and asked, really? Xine Yao looked at Duan Mutachio with pride and nodded. Duan Mutachio thought for a moment, then looked at Suri and said, this isn't difficult. Tell me what happened. Suri looked at Duan Mutachio and said, here's what happened. My mother passed away when I was young, and my sister and I were raised by my father. He didn't have a degree, so he worked as a hired thug to support the family. Later, my sister's health got worse and worse, and she contracted a serious illness. She needed more and more money, so I dropped out of school and started working as a hired thug with my father. In order to get my sister treated, he started taking on some dangerous jobs, but he always kept it from me. One time, he and a few of his brothers were on a mission. During a scuffle, one of my father's brothers used a knife to stab a person in front of him, seriously injuring him. Because he wasn't careful, he missed a step and fell down. The back of his head hit a nail protruding from the wall, and he died on the spot. The person who injured him with the knife was a relative of the boss at the time. They colluded to frame my father. At the time, the police investigated and found my father's fingerprints on the knife. Although my father denied that he didn't kill him, the evidence and witnesses all pointed to my father. In addition, the police colluded with the boss at the time, so my father was locked up in prison. Duan Mutachio nodded and thought for a moment. Now that you mention it, I remember. A few years ago, something like this happened here. At the time, it was very fierce, but the public opinion was quickly suppressed. It seems that this person who can control both the black and white sides is not simple. Little Rue, do you remember who that person was? What was his name? Su Rue nodded and said, I don't know what his real name is. I only know his nickname. I won't forget this name even if I die. I only know that the people around him and in society all call him Brother Hay. Who? Black Brother? How could it be him? When Duan Mutachio heard this name, he instantly became serious. Xine Yao looked at Duan Mutachio and said, what's wrong, Dad? Do you know him? Duan Mutachio calmed himself down. He sat in front of the desk and said with a serious face, the rumor is that Black Brother is called Ji Bai. He was once the most ruthless person in our city's underworld. He had many murders, robberies, smuggling cases, and human trafficking cases. But for some reason, even though he was like this, he still had a way to not get caught. Xine Yao thought for a moment, then said to Duan Mutachio, Dad, are you close to him? Duan Mutachio shook his head. No, I've only met him a few times. We're not close. Chapter 123. Xine Yao glanced at Suri, then looked at Duan Mutachio. Father, is this a difficult task? Duan Mutachio thought for a moment, then said, it's not that difficult. It's been a long time, so Ji Bai probably doesn't remember this matter. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. President Duanmu, I'll have to trouble you. If it's too much trouble, or if it's too troublesome, there's no need. I don't think my father would want to trouble everyone. Suri's tone was calm, but I could feel that he really wanted his father to be rescued. Duan Mutachio looked at Suri. Don't worry, it's not a difficult task. At this moment, Xine Yao stood up. She glanced at me and Suri, and I knew it was time to leave the study. The two of us also stood up. Xine Yao said to Duan Mutachio, Father, you go ahead. I'll leave first. Then the three of us walked out of the study. As soon as we left the study, Suri let out a deep sigh. Xine Yao saw his relaxed expression, then gently patted Suri's back. You don't have to be so nervous when you see my father. Suri sighed, then looked at Xine Yao. I'm not nervous. I just think that President Duanmu is too nice. I didn't expect that he would owe him a favor for someone like me. I feel like I've gone overboard. I looked at Suri and said, don't think like that. You've treated father with sincerity, and I believe that father also treats you with sincerity. Xine Yao smiled at Suri. That's right, that's true. Don't mind it too much. Relax. My father is very good, right? Suri helplessly covered his head. Whatever you say. I'll do as you say. Hearing Suri's tone, I was surprised. He usually didn't speak so gently. I nudged Suri's arm and said softly, Hey, I don't remember you speaking like this before. Xinyao looked at the two of us and asked, "What are you guys talking about?" Suri suddenly shook his head and said loudly, "Nothing, nothing, nothing." Looking at Su Rui's funny appearance, Xinyao and I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Su Rui saw us laughing very happily, so he also laughed. Moreover, he laughed very happily. While the three of us were having fun, I glanced out of the corner of my eye and saw Duanmuke standing at the top of the stairs, looking at us with a serious face. Seeing him, my smile completely disappeared. I stood at the door of the study and looked at him without moving. Suri and Xinyao saw that I stopped laughing and looked in the direction I was looking at. They understood why I had suddenly become serious. Suri pulled Xinyao arm and said softly, "Let's go out. It's not appropriate for the two of us to stay here." Xinyao looked at me worriedly. I patted her shoulder and signaled for them to leave. Suri took Xinyao and left the living room. I still stood at the door of the study and looked at Duanmuke at the top of the stairs. He was still looking at me with a serious expression. I didn't know what he was thinking. However, I understood that he must be very unhappy to see the three of us laughing and joking. I sighed and walked up the stairs. I walked to Duanmuke's side and glanced at him. Then I walked to the bedroom. I walked into the room and stood by the window. Duanmuke followed me in and closed the door. I didn't look at him, but just stared outside the window. My mood was very complicated. Outside the window, Su Rui and Xinyao were talking and laughing as they walked into the garden. It seemed that the two of them were having a good conversation. Thus I was relieved. After all, the two of them had feelings for each other. Duanmuke walked to my side and looked in the direction I was looking. He also saw Suri and Xinyao. He looked at them for a while and then said, "Do you plan to let Xinyao and Suri be together?" He looked at me, his expression still serious. I didn't look at him. I said softly, "As long as two people love each other, are happy together, it's fine. There's no need to consider any external factors. Love is more important than anything else." I didn't know why I said that, but after I said it, my mood was very complicated. Perhaps it represented my inner thoughts. Duanmuke looked at their backs and said to me, "Indeed, you're right. Love doesn't need any extra distracting thoughts, but it's only limited to the person I like. If it's someone I don't like, I can't pretend that I like her very much." Hearing Duanmuke say that, I knew very well that he was saying it for me to hear. He was telling me that he didn't love me at all. I sneered and looked at Duanmuke. What a coincidence. My point of view is very similar to yours, but now it doesn't matter to me. The person I used to love doesn't love me anymore, and the person who loves me, I'm slowly accepting his love for me. This kind of feeling, although complicated, is the best ending for anyone. Duanmuke looked at me and said softly, "So be it. There's nothing wrong with you feeling that way. Anyway, there are only 10 days left. I hope you can live the rest of the days comfortably." I turned and glanced at the bedroom I used to live in. I felt very uncomfortable. I looked at Duanmuke and said, "Okay, that's it. I'm leaving." I smiled at Duanmuke and then walked to the bedroom door. Unexpectedly, Duanmuke suddenly grabbed my arm. I didn't understand why he did that. I turned and looked at him. "What's wrong? Let go. It's not suitable for me to stay here." Duanmuke didn't let go of my arm. He looked at me and said, "There are still 10 days left. At least for these 10 days, you will still be my wife. I understand that you are afraid that I will do something dangerous to you, but I promise that I won't do it again." Duanmuke's eyes became very sincere. I let go of his arm and looked at him. I looked at Duanmuke and said, "It's not about that anymore. I have feelings for you. After what you did before, I completely gave up. I didn't know that you would become like this. Of course, I didn't know what you would become in the future. I don't want to gamble anymore. I thought I won the gamble, but I lost, and I lost so badly." Duanmuke didn't answer. He reached out and grabbed my arm, then pulled me into his arms. I tried to struggle, but Duanmuke held me tightly in his arms. Chapter 124. "Don't move," he said softly. "Let me hold you for a while." Hearing him say that, I stopped struggling and leaned into his arms. Then, I stayed still and felt his heartbeat. He held me like that for a while. Then, he suddenly lifted me up and put me on the bed. I suddenly felt shy and didn't know what to do. Dwanmuke climbed onto the bed and lay next to me. He stared at me without blinking. I didn't know what he was thinking. I thought for a while and asked, "That's not good. Since we've decided to get a divorce, I don't want to sleep with you in order to avoid unnecessary trouble." That was one of my thoughts. However, what I was most afraid of was that he would hurt my child. Dwanmuke was still looking at me. "Just for a while," he said. I didn't know why, but I wasn't used to hearing him speak so calmly. Perhaps if he had been fierce with me, I would have argued with him. But now that he was so calm, I didn't know how to deal with him. Dwanmuke held me in his arms and quietly closed his eyes. I looked at his face and felt that it was so familiar. However, he was no longer the one who loved me. I quietly looked at Dwanmuke for a while. I guessed that he had fallen asleep. I raised my hand and gently touched his face. Although I said that I didn't have feelings for him, I still couldn't let go of him. My love for him had reached the point where it was unforgettable. I touched Dwanmuke's face and looked at him. "Why do I still love you so much when you've already treated me like this? What can you do to make me forget you completely?" I thought that Dwanmuke must have fallen asleep. He didn't answer me. I looked at Dwanmuke, tears falling from the corners of my eyes. I said softly, "You don't love me anymore, right? If you loved me, you wouldn't have treated me like this. Or were you just playing along with me from the beginning? Did you never love me? This thought has been tormenting me for a long time. Ever since you lost your memories, your attitude towards me has really made me wish I was dead. But there's nothing I can do. No matter what you do, I still love you." I sneered and said softly, "Right? I'm very cheap. Sometimes I really don't know what I'm doing." Just as I was caressing Dwanmuke's face and talking to myself, Dwanmuke suddenly opened his eyes, scaring me. I quickly pulled back my hand that was still caressing his face and tried to break free from his embrace. But I didn't expect that Dwanmuke would hug me so tightly that I couldn't escape. My face was burning, and I couldn't look at him directly. Dwanmuke looked at me with a serious face. "I'm not paying attention to you, but you're talking very happily." Hearing Dwanmuke say that, I really wanted to find a hole to hide in. I tried to break free from his embrace again, but Dwanmuke didn't have any intention of letting go. He just lay there and looked at me with a serious face, watching me move around. Dwanmuke sighed and then said to me, "All right, don't move." Dwanmuke continued, "I couldn't help but do some extreme things to you. Of course, I admit that I did all of this, but it also included the things I did when I lost my rationality when my temper flared up. However, none of this was my intention. When I found out that I married you because of my parents' arrangement, although I didn't ask, I knew in my heart that we definitely had relations. Moreover, I could see that your feelings for me were very deep, but I did so many things to hurt you. I also knew that I wasn't a good person, but I couldn't fall in love with you. Although there were several times when I fell asleep, I would always dream of you, dream of happy scenes with you. But when I woke up, I found out that these things didn't exist. Of course, I was very disappointed, and your resistance towards me became stronger and stronger. I also couldn't understand what had happened between the two of us in the past, so the conflict grew bigger and bigger. I didn't know why, but when I heard Dwanmuke say that, I felt like he was looking for all kinds of excuses for himself. I sneered and softly said, "What's the point of pushing everything away?" I pushed Dwanmuke away and lay down in front of him looking at him. "I'm not pushing the responsibility away. I'm just telling you the truth. The truth is that you don't treat me as a human being. The things you did to me, are those things a husband should do? Yes, we agreed to a peaceful divorce, but what about you? You treat me as if I'm not close to you. One moment you're especially good to me. The next moment you're fierce to me. One moment you're holding me in your arms and lecturing me. The next you're throwing me aside and leaving me bruised all over. What do you want me to do? I'm not a toy that you can play with when you want to play with, and then throw aside when you don't want to play with me. I'm a human being, a real human being." I was very angry. I sat up on the bed and stood by the bed, spitting out all the words that had been bottled up in my heart for a long time. Dwanmuke stood up from the bed. He walked past me and opened the wardrobe. It was full of women's clothing, and they were all new. I looked at Dwanmuke with a puzzled expression. I didn't understand what he meant by showing me these things. Dwanmuke turned to me and said, "These are compensation for you. Back then, because I lost my mind, you didn't even have a decent piece of clothing. Take it as my compensation." Then, Dwanmuke took out a gift box from a drawer in the wardrobe. He placed it on the bed and looked at me. "Open it and take a look." I didn't understand what Dwanmuke meant, but I still reached out and opened the gift box. After I opened it, I was shocked. Inside the gift box was a very beautiful white dress. It was very similar to the one Dwanmuke had given me for my birthday. I looked at Dwanmuke in confusion. Dwanmuke looked at me and said, "At that time, I couldn't find that dress. Later, Mom told me that I had given it to you. It was a very exquisite dress, and it was custom-made. So, I found a designer and made a similar dress for you. But I think this one looks better. The previous one was too simple." My heart was no longer calm, and the tears in the corners of my eyes couldn't stop flowing down. I held the dress and looked at Dwanmuke. I thought to myself, is he remembering the past? Or is he apologizing to me? Just as I was puzzled, my phone suddenly rang. I took it out of my pocket. It was a call from Han Hao. I lifted my head and looked at Dwanmuke. He also looked at me with a puzzled expression. He asked softly, "Who is calling?" Chapter 125. I put the phone on silent and didn't answer. I looked at Dwanmuke and said, "There's no one." "Who is it?" Dwanmuke's tone suddenly became stern. I put the phone behind me and looked at Dwanmuke. I shook my head and said, "There's really no one. Don't worry about it." I stepped back, but Dwanmuke suddenly walked in front of me. He reached out and snatched my phone. I tried to snatch it back, but he held it high. I looked at him and said angrily, "Give it back to me." Dwanmuke looked at me, but didn't say anything. He looked at the phone, which was still ringing. It seemed Han Hao hadn't hung up. Dwanmuke picked up the phone. Han Hao's voice came from the other side. "Xiaoli, are you okay? I didn't hear from you all day. I was worried, so I called you first. How are you? Xiaoke didn't bully you, did he?" Dwanmuke looked at me, his eyes full of anger. He said into the phone, "Han Hao, it's me." There was no response from the other side of the phone. Han Hao probably didn't expect it to be Dwanmuke who answered the phone. Dwanmuke saw that there was no response from Han Hao's end. He said, "Han Hao, why are you looking for my woman?" Hearing Dwanmuke say that, I felt very uncomfortable. I reached out to snatch the phone from Dwanmuke's hand. I looked at Dwanmuke and shouted, "Give it back to me, Dwanmuke." Dwanmuke glared at me and pushed me. I lost my balance and fell to the ground. Han Hao seemed to hear it on the other side of the phone. He was worried and said loudly, "Xiaoli? Xiaoli, are you okay? Dwanmuke, what did you do to Xiaoli?" Dwanmuke looked at me fiercely. Then he said into the phone, "Han Hao, 8 o'clock in the evening at the suburban garden. I'll wait for you." Before Han Hao could answer, Dwanmuke hung up the phone. He threw the phone in front of me. I picked it up and looked at Dwanmuke. I asked, "Dwanmuke, why did you do that? Why did you ask Han Hao to come out? Are you going to fight? Do you think Han Hao will fight you? You're his good brother." Dwanmuke squatted down. He raised my chin and stared at me fiercely. Tears glistened in the corners of my eyes. I wanted to avoid his gaze, but I couldn't escape his evil clutches. Dwanmuke's eyes were fixed on me. I couldn't escape. He didn't say a word. He lowered his head and kissed my lips. I panicked. I reached out and pushed Dwanmuke away, but Dwanmuke held me tightly in his arms. I couldn't move and let him kiss me crazily. Dwanmuke gradually slid to my neck. He kissed my neck fiercely. I was in so much pain that I closed my eyes tightly. After a while, Dwanmuke finally let go of me. He looked at me with a cold smile, then let go of me. He walked past me, stood at the door and suddenly stopped. Then he said to me, 7:50. I'll be waiting for you in the living room." You have to come with me. If you don't, then don't blame me for not warning you if something happens to Han Hao. After saying this, Duan Muke pushed open the door and walked out. I lay on the floor, tears streaming down. I didn't know what I had done. Why did Duan Muke do this? I took out my phone and dialed Han Hao's number. After the call went through, I softly called out Han Hao's name. Han Hao. After calling Han Hao's name, I cried even harder. When Han Hao heard my voice, he worriedly said, Shaoli, are you okay? Why are you crying? Don't worry, I'm coming to find you. I shook my head hard and said to Han Hao, Don't. Han Hao, don't come here. Also, don't go tonight. Promise me don't go, okay? Han Hao didn't answer. He was silent again. I was worried. I cried and said, Han Hao, promise me don't go. After a while, Han Hao said to me, Silly, I'm fine. Don't worry. Since Duan Muke called me, I can't not go. Don't worry, we won't have a conflict. But Shaoli, you have to promise me, don't go to the suburban park tonight. Promise me, okay? I couldn't control my tears. I cried and said to Han Hao, I don't want to. Han Hao, I don't want to. You can't go. Duan Muke will hurt you. Promise me. Han Hao gently said to me, Silly, okay. I promise you. Don't cry. It's not convenient for me to go see you today. When tomorrow is over, I'll go see you. Be good, I miss you. Hearing Han Hao's gentle voice, my mood improved a lot. I hung up the phone and stood up. Even Han Hao was so optimistic. How could I be so negative? However, I still had to go with the Duan Mu Quebec. No matter what the Duan Muke did to Han Hao, I had to do my best to help Han Hao fight against the Duan Mu Quebec. Thinking about it, I still decided to keep this matter a secret from everyone. If too many people knew about this, it wouldn't be a good thing. I tidied up my clothes, pushed open the door and walked out. Coincidentally, I bumped into Xinyao holding Su Rui's arm. They were talking and laughing as they walked up from downstairs. When we bumped into each other, both of them froze when they saw me. Xinyao quickly let go of Su Rui's arm. Their eyes wandered and their faces turned red. Xinyao looked at me embarrassedly and said, Ah, sister-in-law, you came out? Where are you going? I'll go with you. Seeing Xinyao speak incoherently, I smiled and whispered to her, You two strolled around until now? I looked at their shy faces and understood. I looked at Xinyao and said, You two are together now. Xinyao's face turned even redder. She grabbed Suri's in my hands and ran into her bedroom. She turned around and closed the door behind her. Xinyao pulled me to sit on the chair. Then, the two of them stood in front of me. Xinyao tugged at the corner of her clothes. Suri reached out and hugged Xinyao tightly. Xinyao snuggled into his embrace like a little bird. The two of them were so sweet that they blinded my eyes. I sat on the chair and looked at Suri. Suri, tell me the truth. Suri raised his head and looked at me. He hugged Xinyao tightly and sighed. Miss, I'll tell you the truth. I'm already with Xinyao. After saying that, Xinyao covered her eyes with her hands. It seemed the news was true. Looking at their happy faces, I was truly happy for them. I looked at Suri and asked, What's the situation? How did you two get together after going out for a stroll? It seems the two of you are developing quite quickly. Chapter 126. Su Rui scratched his head and said to me, After we went out, I saw that Xinyao was unhappy. I asked her what happened, but she didn't say anything at first. Later, we talked about our past relationship and our attitude towards relationships. At that time, my heart was in a mess, but I felt very sorry for her. I felt that she had suffered a lot in the past, so I really wanted to protect her. Then I don't know why, but I couldn't hold back and told her all my thoughts. I turned my head to look at Xinyao and said, And then? Did the girl just agree? Xinyao put down her hands and pouted. Sister-in-law, don't ask. I'm so shy. Xinyao's face turned even redder. She looked very cute. Suri continued. And then Xinyao threw herself into my arms. I was so scared that I didn't know what to do. I held her in my arms, and then Xinyao started crying. I didn't know why she was crying, but my heart ached for her. Xinyao told me what she was thinking. And then what? I asked. Suri's face turned even redder. And then I kissed Xinyao. Xinyao pouted. That was my first kiss. Suri looked at Xinyao. That was my first kiss too. I couldn't help but laugh at their display of affection. I looked at Suri and Xinyao. That's good. As long as you two are happy together, that's good. Suri, don't bully my little Xinyao. I love her the most. Suri nodded. He glanced at Xinyao, then looked at me. Young miss, don't worry. I won't run away anymore. No matter what happens, I will be with Xinyao. Nothing can stop me. I smiled at the two of them. That's good. You two have to be happy. You have to be happy. Xinyao walked in front of me. Holding my hand, she asked softly, Sister-in-law, how are you and my brother? Just now, I saw him walk out with an ugly expression. Did he make things difficult for you again? I sighed. He didn't make things difficult for me. Instead, he became a bit gentle. He even apologized to me for what happened before. He even prepared a closet full of clothes, saying that he wanted to compensate me. Then why did he still have that expression? It shouldn't be. I can't understand him now. He's becoming more and more different from the person I used to know. Although I wasn't in China for a while, I still kept in touch with him. I even bought him a lot of good things that can't be found in China. Although we haven't met, it's definitely not like this. He's so cold. It feels like he doesn't even want me, his little sister. Xinyao pouted and said unhappily. I sighed again and said, when the two of us were in the room, Han Hao suddenly called. I didn't dare to pick up the call. Duan Muke saw that I was acting strangely, so he snatched the phone away from me. Then he quarreled with Han Hao for a bit, and then he left with a dark face. It's my fault. I didn't think too much about it. I should have just picked up or hung up. Gij Han Hao is really too much. How could he be so unlucky? What did my brother say to him? He couldn't have asked him out to fight, right? Hearing Xinyao say that, I was shocked. They really were brother and sister. Xinyao understood Duan Muke very well. Just as I was considering whether or not to tell them the truth, Suri saw my hesitation. He looked at me, then hugged Xinyao and said, Okay, you don't need to worry about this. Your brother isn't a kid anymore. He won't fight for no reason. Suri gave me a look. It seemed he already knew what I was thinking. I nodded and looked at the two of them. It's getting late. Suri, shouldn't you go see your sister? Xinyao jumped out of Suri's embrace. She looked at me and said, Yeah, I forgot such an important thing. Then she ran to the dressing table and rummaged through the drawers for a long time. She pulled out a few bottles of cosmetics and smiled. Great, I finally found them. I promised my sister that I would bring some cosmetics for her. I almost forgot. I looked at Xinyao and asked, You're so close to his sister already? Suri said, Yeah, I only found out today when Xinyao told me. As long as Xinyao has time, she goes to the hospital to visit my sister. She often brings good food and toys for her. I don't think I'm as good a brother as she is. Xinyao made a face at Suri and said, Your sister is much cuter than you. Okay, let's go. The visiting hours will be over soon. Sister-in-law, let's go. Then Xinyao pulled Suri and left. Looking at their happy faces, I felt very happy. I glanced at my watch. There were only 15 minutes left until the fight between Duan Muke and Han Hao. I should pack up and go downstairs. I decided to wear light clothes. If the Duan Muke and Han Hao really fought, it would be easier for me to stop them. I walked out of Xinyao's room and returned to my own. As expected, Duan Muke wasn't there. I opened the wardrobe and looked at the wardrobe full of clothes. My heart didn't feel good. I took out a set of sportswear and put it on. Then carrying my bag, I walked out of the bedroom. I walked downstairs and saw Duan Muke sitting on the sofa in the living room. I walked over to him. He raised his head and looked at me. Then looking at his watch, he said, You're right on time. Let's go. Duan Muke stood up and walked to the door. I followed behind him without saying a word. Duan Muke's car was parked in the courtyard. After we got in, Duan Muke looked at me and said, You're dressed so casually. Are you going to help me fight Han Hao? Or are you going to help Han Hao fight me? I turned my head and looked at Duan Muke. You're overthinking it. I just think it's appropriate to go to the park dressed like this. Duan Muke suddenly put his face in front of mine. I was so scared that I leaned back against the seat and stared into his eyes. Duanmuke looked at me and said, "Cold glaze, don't overthink it. I'm just talking to my brother. I called you to be a witness, so you won't say that I hurt your beloved." Hearing Duanmuke say that, my feelings were complicated. I felt like I'd been caught red-handed in bed. Could it be that Duanmuke was jealous? I looked at Duanmuke and sneered. Could it be that you're doing this because you're jealous? Duanmuke's expression suddenly became very strange. He moved away from my face and sat in the driver's seat. He calmed down for a while, then started the car. "Let's go," he said softly. Chapter 127. Duanmuke and I didn't talk the whole way. We drove very fast, and before 8 o'clock, we arrived at the entrance of the park. Duanmuke and I got out of the car and waited for Hanhao to arrive. Not long after, Hanhao drove to the entrance of the park. He got out of the car and stood in front of me and Duanmuke. I could see that although Hanhao's expression was calm, his heart must be very complicated right now. Duanmuke looked at Hanhao and reached out to pull me into his arms. I was shocked and turned to look at him. I reached out to push him away, but Duanmuke held me tightly in his arms. His eyes were fixed on Hanhao. Hanhao clenched his fists and tried to calm himself down. He looked at Duanmuke and said, "Xiaoke, why did you hand me over?" Duanmuke glanced around. At this time, there were a lot of people walking around. He looked at Hanhao and said, "It's not convenient to talk here. Let's go inside and talk." Then he turned around and walked into the park with me in his arms. Duanmuke held me tightly. He walked very fast, and I could only run to keep up with him. Hanhao followed behind us. I turned to look at him. Hanhao shook his head at me, indicating that I shouldn't struggle anymore. His eyes were very gentle. I understood Hanhao's meaning and gave up struggling. I glanced at Duanmuke. His expression was still very calm. The three of us walked to an open space where there weren't many people around. Duanmuke stopped and pointed to a bench. He looked at me and said, "You go sit there." I didn't understand Duanmuke's meaning. I looked at him and said, "What did you say?" Hanhao walked in front of me. He took off his jacket and put it on my shoulders. He said, "Go sit there. We two men have something to talk about." Even Hanhao said so. I could only nod and agree. I glanced at Hanhao, hoping that he wouldn't be too impulsive and argue with Duanmuke. I quietly walked over to the bench and sat down. The distance wasn't too far. I could just hear the conversation between the two of them. The two of them stood facing each other. Those who knew would think that the two of them were good friends. Those who didn't know would think that the two of them were gay friends. Duanmuke stood in front of Hanhao and looked at him. "You seem to care a lot about my woman." Hanhao smiled. He looked at Duanmuke and said, "You don't cherish her, but someone else will. You can control who your heart belongs to, but you can't control who other people's hearts belong to." Duanmuke took a step forward. He got closer to Hanhao's face and was about to kiss him. Duanmuke looked at Hanhao and said, "It looks like you're going to steal my woman? She's not your woman. You've already decided to divorce her. Oh right, there are still 9 days left. In other words, you and she will still be husband and wife for the next 9 days." Hanhao didn't back down. It looked like he was determined to make things clear with Duanmuke. Duanmuke looked at Hanhao and said, "Aren't you afraid that I'll go back on my word and not divorce her?" Hanhao clenched his fists. He glared at Duanmuke and said, "Don't tell me you want to continue torturing Xiaoli? She's just a woman. If you have any problems, come at me." Duanmuke looked at Hanhao and laughed coldly. "As long as I don't divorce her, Cold Glaze is my woman. I can do whatever I want to her. It's none of your business. If you really want what's best for her, then stay away from her. I'll treat you as my brother. I won't bicker with you." Hanhao suddenly reached out and grabbed Duanmuke's collar. He stared fiercely at Duanmuke and said, "Xiaoke, I'll treat you as my brother. You don't love Xiaoli anymore, so you can't stop me from pursuing her. I can give her what you can't give her. From the moment you said you wanted to divorce her, I've already treated her as my woman. If you don't want to divorce her because you want to torture her, then I'd rather not have a brother like you." Han Hao's words might have angered Duanmu Quebec. Duanmu K reached out and punched Han Hao in the face. Han Hao loosened his grip on Duanmu K's collar and staggered back 2 steps. Blood trickled out of the corner of Han Hao's mouth. He turned his head and looked at Duanmu Quebec. He threw himself at Duanmu K, and the two of them began to wrestle. I was scared by the two of them. I quickly stood up and ran to their side. I didn't know how to stop them, so I could only shout, "You two, stop fighting! Stop fighting!" But no matter how much I shouted, they didn't let go. Seeing that the two of them were getting fiercer and fiercer, I couldn't stop them. I saw an opportunity and stood between them. Although I tried to push them away, they were too strong. I couldn't stop them at all. At that moment, Duanmu K reached out and punched Han Hao. Han Hao was already covered in bruises. I shouted, "Be careful." As I stood in front of Han Hao, Duanmu K's fist landed on my chest. I fell on Han Hao's body and fell to the ground with him. Duanmu K was dumbfounded. He didn't expect that I would stand in front of Han Hao and that he would hit me. Han Hao reacted and quickly hugged me. He gently touched my face and said, Shaoli, are you okay? Shaoli, how are you?" Han Hao looked at me worriedly, his eyes full of tears. I felt a sharp pain in my chest and spat out a mouthful of blood. I didn't care about the pain and reached out to touch my stomach. Then I raised my head to look at Han Hao and said, "Quick, take me to the hospital." Han Hao immediately understood my meaning. He picked me up and ran towards the exit. When he passed by Duanmu K was still standing there in a daze. When he saw that Han Hao had carried me away, he finally reacted and hurried to catch up. Han Hao carried me and rushed to a nearby hospital. Duanmu K also followed. When they arrived at the emergency room, the doctor looked up at the two of them and asked, "Which one of you is the patient's family member?" "I am," the two of them said in unison. Han Hao raised his head and glared at Duanmu Quebec. The doctor looked at them impatiently and asked, "Who is it?" I looked at the doctor and said, "You should tell me." The doctor looked at me and nodded. She looked at Duanmu K and Han Hao and said, "You two go out. I have something to say to the patient." Han Hao looked at the doctor and said, "Can I stay with you?" The doctor glared at Han Hao and said word by word, "No." Han Hao and Duanmu K had no choice but to leave the room. Chapter 128. After they left, I looked at the doctor and asked, "Doctor, is there something wrong with me? Or is there something wrong with my baby?" The doctor looked at me unhappily and said, "You know you're pregnant? How can young people be so crazy? Not only do you not care about yourself, but you don't even care about your baby. Are you still a parent?" After listening to the doctor's lecture, I couldn't say anything. I just lowered my head like a child being lectured. The doctor looked at my dejected appearance and said, "Okay, don't think too much. I just checked you. There's nothing wrong with the baby. It's healthy. You, on the other hand, are too weak. You need more nourishment, not only for yourself but also for the baby." I nodded and agreed with the doctor. The doctor looked at me and covered me with a blanket. "Have a good rest. If you need anything, just ring the bell. I'm leaving." Then the doctor walked out of the room. Not long after the doctor left, Duanmu K and Han Hao entered the room. They stood in front of us and looked at me without saying a word. Their expressions were very serious. Not long after, the door was pushed open. Xinyao and Suri rushed in first, followed by Duanmu Tachio and Xiaofingya. My parents were the last to come in. Everyone was very worried and surrounded my bed. Xinyao's eyes were full of tears. She lay beside me and looked at me. She said worriedly, "Sister-in-law, what happened to you? Why did you go to the hospital again? What did the doctor say? Who did this to you? Sister-in-law, how could you be so careless?" I looked at Xinyao helplessly and said, "You're asking me so many questions. I don't know how to answer." Suri sighed and pulled Xinyao aside. "Okay, Milady's body must be very weak right now. You should let her rest." Then Suri pulled Xinyao to the side. Xiaofingya also came over and sat next to me. She gently stroked my hair and asked, "Shaoli, what happened to you? I just received a call from Duanmu K, and it made me worried. Did Duanmu K make you angry again?" I turned to look at Duanmu Quebec. His face was still dark, but there was a hint of awkwardness. I looked at Xiaofingya and smiled. Mom, I'm fine. The doctor just checked on me. I'm fine. Don't worry. You and Dad don't need to worry. Xiaofingya took my hand and sat on the edge of my bed. Take good care of yourself, she said softly. I'll make some soup for you when we get home. It'll be good for your health. Your body is too weak. You probably suffered because you just had a miscarriage. I smiled and looked at Xiaofingya. Thank you, Mom. Sorry to trouble you. I turned my head to look at my parents. Both of them had very serious expressions. It seemed that the fact that I was sent to the hospital again made them completely unhappy. I looked at Xiaofingya and said, Mom, I have some things that I want to talk to my parents about. Can I trouble you to take everyone back first? Xiaofingya looked at me. It was clear that she didn't want to leave. Xingyao also didn't want to leave. Duamuke saw the awkwardness. He looked at Xiaofingya and said, Mom, you take Dad and Xingyao and leave first. I'll wait here. If there's anything, I'll contact you. Xiaofingya stood up and looked at Duan Mutachio. Duan Mutachio nodded. Then she turned to me and said, Xiaoli, you must take good care of yourself. We'll be leaving first. Then she left with Duan Mutachio. Xingyao ran to my side and kissed me gently on the cheek. Then she pulled Suri and reluctantly left. Duanmuke looked at me and said, I'm going out. Call me if you need anything. He glared at Han Hao and then left the room. Han Hao walked to my bedside and covered me with the quilt. Then he pulled my hand and said, Xiaoli, I'll also go out first. I'm going to buy you some food and daily necessities. According to the doctor, you might need to stay here for 2 more days. You can talk to Uncle and Auntie first. Then, Han Hao kissed me gently on my forehead. He turned around, said goodbye to my parents and left. Only my parents and I were left in the room. After Han Hao left, my mother walked to my bedside. She held my hand and softly asked, Li Er, how are you? How could something like this happen? When Han Hao called me, I couldn't believe that you were in the hospital again. What happened? I told them about the quarrel between Duanmuke and Han Hao. After listening to my story, my father fiercely slapped the armrest of the sofa and said angrily, This is too much. The Duanmu family is becoming more and more lawless. My daughter, it seems that your decision to divorce was correct. No matter what, your father didn't understand you before. It seems that I was wrong. Now I support your decision. My mother turned around and glared at my father. She said softly, Your daughter is like this, and you still care about your own interests. Why don't you care about your daughter? My mother turned to look at me and said, Li Er, don't think about it. What did the doctor say? Is there any problem with your body? Is there any problem with the baby in your belly? I shook my head and held my mother's hand. Mom, I'm fine. Don't worry. I'm fine. The baby is fine too. Don't worry. The doctor said that my body is very weak and I need to rest. I need to eat and drink. My mother's eyes were moist. She tightly held my hand and said, Li Er, your mother's heart hurts. I didn't think that you would suffer so many grievances in the Duanmu family. Your father and I both feel sorry for you. It will take a few more days for you to escape from this abyss of suffering. But these few days are enough to make my heart ache. Mom, it's okay. Don't worry. I'm fine. I'll be fine in a few more days. Seeing my mother cry, my heart also felt very uncomfortable. My mother wiped her eyes and looked at me. By the way, Li Er, I just saw Han Hao's behavior towards you. It didn't seem as simple as an ordinary friend. Could it be that you two are already together? I didn't dare to look at my mother. My eyes drifted. I didn't know how to tell her. My mother sighed. She held my hand and said, Li Er, Han Hao is a good child. But you confirmed your relationship with him so early. Does Duanmuke know? Did all these things happen today because he knows you two are together? I gently nodded and looked at my mother. He already knows. I don't know what he was thinking. He suddenly asked Han Hao out to fight. I couldn't stop him no matter how hard I tried. I didn't expect that when the two of them fought, the one who got hurt was me. Chapter 129. My mother sighed. Isn't it too early for him to know about this? You two are really too much. You only have a few days left. Why can't you wait any longer? At this time, my father glared at me. To be honest, Han Hao is a good kid. But his family status and background, I don't think he's good enough for you. I pursed my lips. Dad, feelings and status can't be measured together. I really like Han Hao, and I'm willing to be with him. But I need time to heal the wounds Duanmu has inflicted on me. My mother stroked my hair. Li-er, do you still love Duanmu? I lowered my head and didn't say anything. My mother hugged me. Poor child, she said. This is the most heart-wrenching feeling. My father looked at me. How about this? I'll find some time to talk to Han Hao and see what he thinks. You rest well. Your mother and I will go back first. I haven't talked to my daughter enough. Why are you in such a hurry to go back? Besides, if we let her stay here now, when she's discharged from the hospital, will she have to go back to the Duanmu family? I don't expect them to treat our daughter well. What if she really hurts her body? What if she really hurts the child? What do you want me to do? My mother's eyes reddened again. I quickly reached out and wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes. My father looked at my mother very calmly. That won't happen. There are only a few days left. Just hold on a little longer. If we choose to force a divorce at this time, it will be very disadvantageous for the Red Minghui. My father turned to look at me. Li-er, he said. It's been hard on you. Just stay here for a few more days, and everything will be fine. I looked at my father and smiled. I understand, Dad. After my mother said a few more words, my father pulled my mother out of the room. I was the only one left in the large room. I lay on the bed, the wound on my chest still aching. I couldn't take it anymore. I turned over and reached for the glass on the bedside table. But just as I was about to reach for it, a hand reached out and held the glass in front of me. I looked up. It was none other than Duanmu Quebec. I reached out and took the glass. He held my shoulder and propped up my pillow, making it easier for me to lean against the headboard. I took a sip of water and looked at Duanmu Quebec. Thank you, I said. Duanmu reached for a chair and sat on the bedside table. He didn't say anything, but just stared at me. Duanmu looked at me with a gentle gaze. I was getting more and more confused about what he was thinking. Seeing that he didn't intend to speak, I had no choice but to break the awkward silence. I looked at Duanmu and asked, "Why did you come back?" Duanmu still didn't answer. He looked at my face, then shifted his gaze downwards. He stared at the spot on my chest where he'd hit me. I blushed instantly. I was too embarrassed to ask, so I turned my head away to avoid looking at him. Duanmu suddenly reached out and unbuttoned my shirt. My breasts were exposed in front of Duanmu Quebec. He stared at my breasts. I quickly covered them and glared at him. "What are you doing?" He didn't say anything. He stood up, grabbed my hand, and moved my arm away. He continued to stare at my chest with great pleasure. I struggled with all my might, but he held my hand tightly. My face flushed red, and I shouted at Duanmu, "What are you doing?" Duanmu looked at me and let go of my hand. I quickly buttoned up my shirt. I stared at Duanmu, and he stared back at me. Duanmu pointed at my chest and said, "It hurts, doesn't it? It's bruised." I was stunned. Duanmu had unbuttoned my shirt to see where he'd hit me. I calmed down a little. Still clutching my chest, I said to Duanmu, "It's okay. It doesn't hurt anymore. The doctor said that I can be discharged in 2 days." I glanced at him and turned my head away. "It's one step closer to the date of your divorce. You won't be upset when you see me." Duanmu looked at me. He lowered his voice and said, "I suddenly made a decision. I don't want a divorce anymore. As long as I give up on the divorce before the deadline, you will still be my wife." Hearing Duanmu say that, I was shocked. I looked at Duanmu and asked, "You can't take back what you've said. Are you treating our relationship as a joke? When I didn't want to give up on you, you chose to give up on me. When I gave up on you, you came to pester me. What do you mean? I've told you before. I'm not a toy." Duanmu stood up and supported himself on the edge of my bed. His face gradually came closer to mine. I stepped back and he came closer. When he was about to touch my face, Duanmu reached out and held my chin. He looked at me and said, "Don't think that I don't want to divorce you because I have feelings for you. It's because I don't want you to be with Han Hao. Instead of wishing you happiness, I'd rather break you up. Hearing Duanmuke say that, I was angry. I reached out and slapped him, but I didn't use too much strength. Perhaps it was because my body was too weak. Duanmuke looked at me and sneered. He looked at me and said, "Cold glaze. I don't want anyone else to have what I can't have. I also won't let anyone else have what I don't want." I pushed Duanmuke, but because my body was too weak, my forehead started to sweat. My face was pale, and I collapsed on the bed. Duanmuke saw that something was wrong with me, so he quickly put me down. He ran out of the room and shouted for the doctor. Not long after, the doctor came. It was the same doctor who had treated me at the beginning. She glared at me and gave me a simple checkup. Then she looked at me and said meaningfully, "Good, it's nothing serious." She turned and looked at Duanmuke, who was standing to the side, and said loudly, "The patient's body is too weak. She needs to rest. Don't do anything to agitate the patient. Give the patient enough time to rest." Then, she glared at Duanmuke and left with the nurse. Duanmuke stood there and looked at me with a serious expression. It seemed that my sudden situation had frightened him. He stood to the side without saying a word. Although he looked calm, he was probably very conflicted inside. I looked at him standing there like a block of wood. I sighed and looked at him, saying, "You should go back. It's getting late and I'm tired. I want to rest for a while." Chapter 130. Duanmuke looked at me and nodded. "You should rest. It's okay to come home a few days later." Then he left. Looking at his back, I didn't know why I felt so sad. Duanmuke suddenly didn't want a divorce. Wasn't this the result I wanted? If he didn't want a divorce, would I still love him as before? But why did he suddenly appear in my life when I was ready to let go? Did he just want to torment me? Unconsciously, I fell asleep. I didn't know how long I had slept, but I smelled the fragrance of chicken soup. I sniffed it and it smelled real. It didn't feel like a dream. I opened my eyes and saw Han Hao sitting next to me. He was fiddling with 2 or 3 thermal lunch boxes on the table. I sat up on the bed, rubbed my eyes, and looked at him with a sleepy face. When Han Hao saw that I had woken up, he gently touched my face and kissed my forehead. He smiled and asked me, "You're awake? Did you sleep well? I saw that you were sleeping very soundly, so I didn't dare to disturb you." I rubbed my eyes and looked at Han Hao. "How long have you been here? Why didn't you wake me up?" Han Hao gently stroked my hair. "I've been here for a while, but you were sleeping." I asked the doctor. He said that you were very weak and needed to rest, so I didn't wake you up. Auntie sent someone to bring you pork rib soup. Auntie Xiao personally cooked chicken stewed with mushrooms for you. I also asked the housekeeper to prepare millet congee and some refreshing dishes for you. Look, there are so many delicious dishes. They will definitely make up for all the nutrients you've lost. I looked at Han Hao and smiled. "It's too much. I can't finish it all. Eat with me," I said softly. Han Hao turned his head to look at me. He leaned over and kissed my forehead. He looked at me and said, "Silly, not only do I want to eat with you, I also want to sleep with you. The hospital is such a scary place. I really don't feel safe leaving you alone. I will always be with you. I have already prepared a change of clothes and toiletries. I have already contacted Qingyao. Tomorrow, she and Su Rue will be in charge of bringing us food to ensure that we won't starve to death. I am prepared to stay by your side." "I'm going to stay by your side." Looking at Han Hao's funny face, I laughed. "This room isn't big. There's no place for you to sleep." I looked around the room. It was true that the emergency room was small. Although it was a single room, the conditions were still bad. Han Hao scooped a bowl of soup and handed it to me. He pointed at the sofa next to him. "I'll just squeeze in there." I looked at the 2-seater sofa, and then looked at Han Hao's 183 meters height. I shook my head helplessly. "It's too cramped. There's only so much space." Han Hao reached out and stroked my hair. "Silly, I'm fine. Don't worry. As long as I can stay with you, I'll do anything. I'll even sleep on the floor." Han Hao looked at me with a bright smile. Looking at his smile, my mood improved a lot. Han Hao handed me another bowl of congee. Looking at me, he said, "Be good, eat more." I took the bowl Han Hao handed over and began to eat in big mouthfuls. The two of us chatted as we ate. Finally, we finished dinner. Han Hao was definitely a clean freak. He cleaned up the entire room. I sat by the bed and looked at his busy figure. I suddenly felt very happy. This was how two people lived their lives. After Han Hao finished cleaning the room, he looked at the time and saw that it was still early. He wanted to take me to the garden behind the hospital for a walk. At first I refused, but he insisted. I had to listen to him. Han Hao was afraid that I would be tired, so he borrowed a wheelchair from the nurse's station. He pushed me and took me to the park. When we arrived at a deserted place, Han Hao stopped. He sat on the stone bench across from me and adjusted my jacket. He was afraid that I would freeze. Han Hao stretched. He looked at me and said, "Xiaoli, are you cold? Do you feel any discomfort?" I looked at Han Hao and shook my head. He suddenly thought of something. He looked at me and said, "Xiaoli, I forgot to bring you some water. I'll go get it for you." Then, Han Hao hurriedly ran to the hospital building. After I watched him enter the building, I could only patiently wait for him. After waiting for a while, a little girl came in front of me. She held a rose in her hand. She walked in front of me and said, "Excuse me, are you Xiaoli Jiejie?" I looked at the cute little girl and smiled. "Yes, I am. Who are you?" The little girl handed the rose to me. She looked at me and said in a sweet voice, "Xiaoli Jiejie, a handsome brother asked me to give this to you. Sister, take it. I'm leaving." The little girl put the roses in my hand and ran away. While I was puzzled, two more little girls ran over and said the same thing. They also put the roses in my hand. Then, the third, the fourth, the fifth. When I was holding a big bouquet of roses in my arms and couldn't take any more, a spotlight shone on the lawn in front of me. I was stunned. Then, a figure slowly walked out of the shadows and into the spotlight. It was Han Hao. He had changed his clothes and was wearing a handsome suit. He stood in front of me with a serious expression. I stood up with the flowers in my hands. I didn't know what was going on. At this time, romantic music came from somewhere. Han Hao slowly walked towards me. The spotlight followed Han Hao's figure. Han Hao stopped in front of me and looked at me with a warm smile. Han Hao reached out and gently stroked my face. His eyes were full of affection. I looked into Han Hao's eyes and said, "What's going on? Just now, a few little girls came to give me flowers. They all said that you asked them to give it to me. What's going on?" Han Hao looked at me and smiled. He gently kissed me on the forehead. He looked at me and said, "Xiaoli, maybe it's too early to say these things, but I can't wait any longer. I can't wait any longer, so I've decided to say it all today." Looking at Han Hao's serious face, I touched his face and said, "What's going on? Just tell me." Han Hao took out a box from his pocket and opened it. It was a diamond ring. He knelt on one knee and held the ring in front of me. He looked at me and said, "Xiaoli, marry me." You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.